Hey, what's up, everyone? You're going to lose me here for a second visually. Sorry, I'm running a little late.
We both are missing.
Okay, bub.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right, my dad's driving record, so I'm gonna mute up.
Rob, you got a new background.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. 1 second here. I had a work situation come up. Sorry, I was on the phone. Nothing too important, but let me find. There we go. All right, we're good to go. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm streaming if that's okay with you. You don't mind?
Okay. Not at all. How dare you?
I knew you wouldn't care, but I always like to ask.
No, I saw your Twitter. I know you normally do when we do it together, so I don't mind. I don't care.
Okay. Yeah, we got a new supervisor at work, and they haven't figured out that I work block shifts, so it's like I'm done on Wednesdays, but instead it's call it dinner time on Thursday and go over a bunch of stuff. So I kept being like, I have another obligation if we could wrap it up. But we made it. We made it just in the skin of the teeth, so...
Yeah, man. Hey, thanks for coming on. I've been meaning to get you to come up, back on again and have you to have a conversation because you're always awesome to talk to.
Well, I feel the same with you. And actually, I'm going to bug you here soon. I'm doing this panel show, and I wanted to bug you and Drone Tech and Sarah to see if you'd ever be interested in coming on.
Whenever you need me for anything, man, I'm always willing to help out. You know that.
Yeah. I think it's always the same old faces on these panel shows. You know what I mean? And I think it's funny. Yeah. We have this, with our group chat that we have, it's weird how, I do this, Sparky's with me. Me and Sparky are always going through the mud on these Twitch debates. But it's I haven't seen you guys there much, and I think you would do awesome there. I really do. We'll get you lined up with a topic that I know you'd like to talk about someday.
Those guys on those debate shows with you, they're always like, "Well, source, where's your source on that?" I'm like, "Dude, it's source." I'm like, "Really? Come on, man."
Oh man, I was getting that the other day in the worst possible. I can't remember what the exact argument was, but I was just like I'm done with this conversation. I'm not gonna. Oh, I was debating someone on the Tyree Nichols killing. And they kept saying, I was like, this dude was telling the audience that what you should do is if you feel the police pulled you over incorrectly, you should run from them. And I'm like, don't do that. That's a bad idea. And he's like, what if they're raping you? Why is that bad? And I was like, yeah, I'm done with this. I don't have to sit here and explain arguments. Source, please, on why that's bad. Okay, yeah.
All right, I'm going to throw our intro up. Just roll with it. You're pretty good at that. Obviously, the big topic is, of course, what's happening in Ohio and right on the border of Pennsylvania. So I don't know how far you are from that whole thing. We'll talk about it when we get there.
70 miles, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, we got a lot to talk about. That'll be the bulk. That'll be the first at least half hour of the show. And then I have other stories that new YouTube CEO coming in. Sometimes it's better with a devil that you know than you don't, so I kind of mixed emotions about that coming in. But we'll talk about all that, and I know you're great to be able to fly on the seat of your pants. So,
all right,
so I'm going to throw us in.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm going to throw us in the back real quick, and then I'll put us back out.
Sounds good.
T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff.
Live from somewhere deep in the freedom state of Florida, it's the Let's Be Frank Show with your host, Frank.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining me on a old/new night. Haven't done a Thursday stream in, I don't know, probably about a year. It's been a long time since I've done a Thursday stream. And I'm glad to be back doing some of these more weekday streams and being able to stream more often. I've only done like one stream a week with political stuff. I know I do 5 days a week on my Bible study stuff, which is fantastic. And that's at 9 a.m. every Monday through Friday. So I encourage you guys to check that out. It's here on this channel here, Uniquely Us. So we're broadcasting from today because the other channel, Let's Be Frank, as many of you guys might know, is under appeal review right now for monetization. I lost my monetization earlier this month, and the appeal process could take up to 2 weeks. They just took under appeal on Friday of last week. So we're coming up on a week now with that appeal process. And joining me tonight for the first time in a very long time, Mr. robnoerr.
Thank you so much. Always one of my favorite people to talk to. Criminal how attacked you are by the people running YouTube. I always feel bad, but I'm always happy to be here. It's always a great time.
Yeah, no, it's always fantastic. And, it's part of the process being on this platform. We know the pitfalls and we know the traps and we know what can happen with us broadcasting on YouTube. But YouTube still being the largest platform in the world where you can still reach people, I don't want to negate the efforts of what we do here and continue and just move to a smaller platform while we can still reach people. And so that's why I think the fight should still continue on these platforms, even though many of us can suffer some losses on the way. And this is the first time I've been demonetized in almost 18 months. So it was a good run. The good news is this channel here that we're broadcasting from is monetized. So you guys can continue to help support me through that. And I think, I wanted to say thank you to Sleeper, who started off before we even started streaming this evening with a $20 super chat. So I did appreciate, he said, priming the tip jar. Thank you so much, Sleeper. I do appreciate it. Thank you all who are coming in and hanging out here with us for tonight's show. We got a lot to talk about. Really want to focus in and zero in on what's currently going on, the big major story that has been going on for what many people might not know for the last 2 weeks. The derailment of this train in East Palestine, Ohio. And just to preface that, I just want to remind everybody out there that trail derailments happen at a huge number a year, 1,700 a year trail derailments we have in this country. And that is a bigger issue that we need to look at. This is a terrible issue that we're dealing with right now as a direct result of our poor infrastructure that both parties have drugged their feet on trying to repair. Our railways are ancient. I'm sure many of them are still probably a Civil War or post-Civil War being put into the ground, and they have not been repaired or upkept like they should. And that goes a lot with the companies, along with the federal government that has a responsibility to ensure that these rails are safe to travel on, and roadways, highways, air traffic. I mean, all of what we've seen, Rob, is a direct result of both parties dropping the ball on the infrastructure in this country.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And obviously, let's be honest. So we'll defend Steelman, the current administration, a little. I don't think this is a situation that would have been impossible to have a derailment like this under Trump or under Bush. That's not what I'm going to say. This is definitely a structural infrastructure problem that we've seen building up year over year. There's a lot of derailments. There's a lot of other things going on with our infrastructure, which hopefully we'll talk more about. To me, the terrible nature of this administration has to do with the reaction to
the response.
Right, the response. And to me, but when it comes to sort of, look, there's two things. The less we're spending on infrastructure, we continue to spend trillion-dollar bills for infrastructure. The only thing is, infrastructure is everything but roads, railways, the electric grid. They call everything else infrastructure, but not that stuff. So they keep saying, oh, we need more money because the train derailed, and then they'll go spend it on critical race theory.
Equity. We need equity. Right, that is infrastructure, right? Childcare is infrastructure, as they were telling us during that infrastructure bill they were debating last year. If you recall that, I know I recall that. I know a lot of Americans out there have a short memory, but they everything was infrastructure. Everything was infrastructure.
I wish I had it saved. I had a debate with a bigger left-winger on a panel, and they were going on about all this stuff. And I said, can you name me one thing that's not infrastructure? And they couldn't do it. Everything is infrastructure, right? Like, that's how ridiculous it is. And then when everything's infrastructure, nothing's infrastructure. And then you wonder why your roads aren't being repaired, why bridges are, famously
Why
here
your
outside of
water's
Pittsburgh.
nasty.
Right. Outside of Pittsburgh here last year, a bridge collapsed. Like this, and in Pennsylvania, by the way, I don't know if people knew this, we have, I believe, the second highest gasoline tax, where all of that money is supposed to go to our roads. And the roads here are terrible.
Your
So
roads
it's like,
suck. Your roads suck. I've been to Pennsylvania. They suck.
It's crazy. We're paying almost $4 a gallon for gas. So much of that in taxes. Where's all the money going? So that's the first thing with the infrastructure. But the second thing that we have to realize is we're going to start to see more and more of this, because something that you mentioned, equity. We're no longer promoting our best. Engineers aren't the people that are the best engineers anymore. It's the people that check the right boxes to get in these positions. That's how we have a person at the Department of Transportation, in Pete Buttigieg, who's probably the least qualified person ever for that job, but he checked the right diversity boxes. So when you're breathing in toxic fumes in East Palestine, you can take solace in the fact as you suffer through cancer. At least the Department of Transportation is ran by a gay man. You can feel good about that,
Yeah, so check this out, Rob. And speaking of our lousy EPA and our lousy response to this, this is one of the head of the EPA in East Palestine. Let's take a listen to this response real quick.
Airplanes, mobilize mobile sources. We have stationary air monitoring as well. And we have done indoor air.
Our photographer has repositioned. That is the administrator of the EPA, Michael Regan. Let's listen in.
The science will dictate how far it spans out. So we're trusting the science, but we believe that we are looking at the proper radiuses to ensure that we're protecting public health.
Mr. Regan, how do you build trust with it?
So you got to trust the science, Rob. You got to trust the science. It's safe and effective there in East Palestine. Just so if you were wondering, safe and effective to drink that water out of that river, I'm sure.
Isn't it funny, if you keep an eye towards these things and an ear towards it, how you could pick up on this coded language that lets you know when they're being propagandist? We're on YouTube, so I won't talk specifically about things, but there was an event that's been occurring for the past 3 years that we've been repeatedly told to trust the science. Only it seems like the science is just what's politically convenient for the people in charge at that time. So when someone tells you to trust the science, what they're really telling you is don't ask questions. They're actually telling you to be unscientific, because the scientific method is rigorous testing. And we've seen incident after incident where we've had big corporations have these environmental catastrophes, or the government have environmental catastrophes where they told us everything was safe, and then it turned out a bunch of people got really sick, like Camp Lagoon, like the burn pits, the toxic burn, like 9/11 responders. So why would it be all of a sudden after those lessons that we're told now, it's okay, go back to your homes as the animals are dying, but trust the science?
Yeah, and it's interesting. We, you and I both know someone that is in close or has close connections to that area. And I spoke with her earlier this week. I had her on a video. We talked about what was going on, and she's the one that actually enlightened me in knowing how many accidents we have on trains. But with that being said, some of the stuff that we are seeing coming out of there, there are a loss of life already with livestock, with chickens, smaller animals, foxes, the fish and the thing. I'm sure will start impacting more birds. This is a bigger environmental disaster than we've seen on this scale in some time in this country. And some people were wondering, Rob, is the response for the federal government slow because this is a mostly conservative area? And I also pointed this out in one of my other videos talking about this area that's impacted by this chemical spillage is right there in the heart of Amish country. Mm-hmm. Amish country is huge in East Palestine and up into Pennsylvania there, and that whole basin there. And many people have speculated, there's some conspiracies out there and stuff. Is this a way to drag your feet and impact these people who have rejected the regime, rejected, this type of view of city living and buying into the government type of assistance. And now that this has occurred, they're like, well, we'll just take our time getting in there. Maybe we'll have less Republican voters we have to worry about. I know that's nefarious. I know that's very nefarious, and that would be scandalous to think that our administration would do that. But based off of the response of this, this happened 2 weeks ago, Rob. This happened 2 weeks ago. I saw the first story that came out talking about the chickens. I wasn't sure much about it until later in the week. And then I found out that there was a huge cover-up from the mainstream media, not wanting to let this leak out because it looked bad on the Department of Transportation, which has already had all kinds of issues since the Biden regime. We've seen the grounding of planes just recently. That was the first time since 9/11 that we had all of our planes grounded here in the United States. And we've seen, the response and supply chain that we had earlier on. They try to blame COVID, but it was really the COVID response that was causing the backups in all of these areas, the ridiculous mandates that they were putting in place that was causing this. And and it just goes on and on and on. So my question to you is, as a normie, as a person looking from the outside, or maybe someone looking there that's close to that area, do people feel that the federal government is punishing them maybe for the way they voted?
Well, so let me precursor it by saying this. I do not put that beyond the federal government. I think these are people that, for example, wanted people to feel pain going into the 2020 election with the George Floyd riots, where Democratic areas intentionally allowed those riots to continue because they saw it as harming Trump or harming conservatives. I think you saw that with some of the responses to lockdowns, where they basically admitted people that don't take our preferred medication, we're going to make their life a living hell. So I don't put it beyond that. I question whether that's what's happening in this specific situation, only in this sense. To me, this is very reminiscent of the Flint, Michigan water crisis. And that was a predominantly black area, right? I think the lesson to be learned here, and there's one silver lining to this, I actually think you're seeing some left-wing people, some progressives wake up to how terrible. The same people that said, vote for us, we care about the environment, we care about the climate. They don't care at all. No. They don't care about poor people. They don't care about people's health, right? And they've been telling us they need to make all of these decisions for your health, for your environment. They've been telling us for 3 years since the Biden administration came into power, and they don't care about that. So what I'll say is, it's clear, regardless if it's because they're Trump voters, because they're poor, it's clear that the federal government treats these people with indifference, just like they treated the people in Flint. If this was Martha's Vineyard, there would have been a big reckoning. If this was...
remember when they dropped off the illegals in Martha's Vineyard? How quickly were they compassionate enough to send them back to where they came from?
Yeah, and the other thing is, right, like, the other thing is, had this happened under Trump, it would have been a big story.
Of course.
But this doesn't check the boxes, right? So it's not a big story because the population that lives there aren't people that anyone cares about. So even with Flint, what you saw there, it did take a while. Let's not kid ourselves. But what you saw there was there's a lot of activists that speak up for the internet. Right. Who's there for the rural people? No one really. So there's no one to speak up for them. It affected people that the government doesn't care about. It happened under an administration that the media is going to run cover for. And, I think one thing to take from this is the reason they were so fearful of someone like Elon Musk buying Twitter is the establishment is so bad that they need to control the flow of information. And we wouldn't even have heard of this story in the manner we are if it wasn't for social media. The mainstream media did not talk about it for almost 2 weeks until the story blew up on places like Twitter. It blew up with like your guest that was on her. I'm talking to her this evening, by the way, later. It's those human stories having access to social media that forced the hand. Pete Buttigieg wasn't going to say word one about this.
Not at all.
Forced to cover it up because it blew up in their face.
Yeah, and you're right. And he came out. He was very indifferent when was asked about this. I actually have the video of him right here. We'll take a look at this real quick because it just to show you how unserious these people really are. Maybe I didn't have it. I thought I had it queued up. Well, anyway, with him basically, he basically kind of shrugged it off saying, oh, we have all kinds of trail derailments across the country. Well, okay, that's true. But this one's different because of the chemical part of it. And it's very bad. It's very bad. It's impacting a lot of people. Maybe we should focus on that a little bit more, but they're not. I wrote this earlier on Twitter. I said, the globalists will say we're in a food crisis. They're going to create a food crisis because of climate change and will mandate us to eat bug food, Rob. This is where we're heading. This is just another step. They're going to contaminate this, play dumb about it. This area will be contaminated. Maybe we can't grow food there. Maybe the food will be contaminated. We can't, use it. Can't use the livestock out of that area. And so now the food's starting to become more scarce. And it's okay though. We got you covered. We got these bug burgers, Rob, that you could eat now that's provided by the U.S. government. So don't worry about it. We got you covered on that. So just don't eat that anymore. Don't eat your own food. Don't eat your own eggs and raise your own chickens and have your own livestock, because that, in a way, some conspiracy theories out there, or some people that have their pulse on what's going on with people trying to become self-reliant. This whole self-reliant movement really got kicked off in 2020 during the pandemic. where people said, oh, maybe I should start looking in, maybe having my own chickens. Maybe I should start looking. There was a huge trend. I mean, you can look at it on social media. You can look at it up on video sharing and stuff like that. People were interested in how to raise my own chickens, how to raise my own garden, stuff like that. What a good way to go ahead and ruin that for a lot of people by, dragging your feet in response to this.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly true. Look at the double standard. The same people that are seriously proposing that you shouldn't be allowed to have a gas stove because it's bad for your lungs don't care that some of the most carcinogenic chemicals from World War I era are being spread all across the Ohio River Basin. They just don't care, right? And like what I always say is the double standard proves two things. It proves that they don't care about what they're talking about, but it also proves that they know you do. Now, me and you, we might not be traditionally big government regulation people, or we wouldn't even maybe be considered huge environmentalists. But certainly both of us care about mass environmental destruction. We both care about that, right? But they don't, right? And so they use that double standard because they know that gets them some sort of power. They know, for example, let's take the easy example, kids in cages. I might have problems with illegal immigration, but I don't want to see any kid in a cage ever. I understand that it's unfortunately something that has to happen because there's no good answer. If someone comes to the border with a child and we have to detain the adult, what do? Detain the child with the adult? Do you leave the child go on their own? Of course not. Like, you got to temporarily detain the child, hopefully in a humane way. But I care about that. And so when they attack Trump by saying kids in cages, they know that's effective because the other side's like, yeah, that is kind of not a good thing. But then when Biden gets in office and there's 4 times more kids in cages, they don't care at all. They're like, well, those kids are different. Those are different types of kids. So who cares about those kids? Who cares if there's 4 times? What that told you is they never cared, but they knew you did, right? And it's the same with this. They don't care about climate change. All of these people that talk about climate change, it's this abstract end of the world thing. And let me be clear, there's 2 different people. There's the people in charge that are exploiting this to be authoritarian like you're talking about. But there are people that sincerely believe this, that are just like regular people like us, that buy into this sort of cult, doomsday cult, that we're all going to die of climate change. And for them, it's easier to feel like you're changing the world, fighting the biggest problem, climate change, than realize you could go and help the environment right now by cleaning up your local forest, by cleaning up your local streets, by helping with conservation projects and, hunters and farmers and people like that actually are doing more for the environment than all of these college-educated people that just pontificate massively about how poor people shouldn't be allowed to drive cars or have gas stoves, but they're actually not doing anything when there's real environmental issues. And this, to me, is the prime example of that, where we actually see real environmental degradation affecting real people's lives, affecting real animals, affecting real water supplies, and mum's the word from most of the people that shout about climate change every day.
And what I'm afraid about is this story will go away very quickly. Right now, we have a highlight on it because of the immense pressure that has social media has put on mainstream media and politicians to talk about it. But they want to stop talking about this as soon as they can, and I fear this will be out of the news cycle before the end of the week, or before by the start of next week. Some other crisis, some balloon floating across the country will be the next big story. And we continue to move in this direction. And there's just so much here, Rob, that I think the majority of the American people are missing on not just this again. I'm not saying it is, but it feels like it's coordinated with just the thing that was inside of those containers, and they spill out, conveniently near the Ohio River. There that could potentially pollute. We know there's aggression growing with Russia across with them because of our warmongering in Ukraine, because of what we want to cover up there, and we see this push. Russia already said, they're like, the United States is not going to learn until maybe they get a nuke in them. I mean, that's a lot of stuff that I think people aren't realizing, and they don't care, because in order for them to win, they have to keep you distracted from everything else that's really going on. This is an important story, but they're going to try to distract you with war. They're going to try to distract you with things that are happening elsewhere.
That's one of the crazy things. Like, not only are they going to try,
and not only that, real quick, Rob, I know you deal with a lot of these individuals, these people who identify to be on the left all the time, and how quickly they have become the biggest warmongers on this side of their political thing because it's part of their party. They now have to be warmongers now. If not, they're not left enough, and they'll be considered far right fascists who are akin to Putin.
Right. Well, I'm a xenophobe because I don't want war around the world. Makes sense of that, you know? Yeah, I mean, I always say one of the awesome, like scary but awesome things that have occurred, and I mean I'm in awe of, is our ability for our intelligence agency to propagandize so bad that it only took them 2 presidencies to take the most verbal anti-war people on the left and make them the most verbal pro-war people. It took Barack Obama,
pro-establishment too.
Right. First black president, which don't get me wrong, I would never vote for a president because of their skin color, but I understand people that are like, if you were black and lived through the civil rights movement, the importance of having the first black president, fine. So I get the wanting to like that historic. So they took that guy who was hip and cool and basically just continued all the pro-war policies of Bush. And then Donald Trump, who for all of his faults, at least paid lip service to ending these ridiculous wars. And that's all it took. Well, Orange Man bad and Barack Obama good. So if Barack liked war and Orange Man didn't, then war must be good. And it's that simple. The people, that's how easy they were. You know, I'll say this real quick about the distractions. Part of that's true, that it's intentional distractions. But the other part of it is, you're right to be distracted because things are so incompetent and corrupt now with this administration and with our establishment that there really is an insane story that breaks every week. You know, I find it, sometimes I like to just go back my catalog of live streams. Just go back like 8 months. What were we talking about? There are stories that you can't believe we're no longer talking about. Like, let me give you an example. Like, when I heard these unidentified objects being shot down, to me, the story that immediately came to my mind was the withdrawal of Afghanistan. Now, I supported the withdrawal, but the way that it occurred was terrible. And what happened there was we relied on the Taliban for security because we closed Bagram Air Base. The same Taliban that freed ISIS from Bagram, we then said, hey, Taliban, can you protect us from ISIS? And they said, sure. And then ISIS killed servicemen. And so there was egg on the face of the Biden administration. So what did they do? They bombed ISIS-K. Yay, we got ISIS-K. Only we found out it wasn't ISIS-K. It was a bunch of children. That's who they bombed. The UFO story, to me, reeks of the same thing. They got embarrassed with this Chinese spy balloon, so now they're like, we're going to shoot anything down. Anything we see, just so we look like tough guys. And now
you know what it turns out to be? It's weather balloons.
Civilian aircraft is now what it looks like it's going to. And it's like, you can't help but think that same pattern's playing out with this East Palestine train derailment, where you originally had my governor, Josh Shapiro, here in Pennsylvania, Democrat, by the way, came out and was like, yeah, we agree with the decision. For those that don't know, I, by no means am I a scientist, but let me say as clearly as I can. These chemicals were burning. The way to disperse them would have required an elaborate cleanup. So instead what they did was intentionally blow them up, which dispersed it in the air. So the chemicals are no longer laying on the ground burning. They're all through your lungs and through the air. That's what they decided to do.
Trust the science, Rob.
Right, originally Josh Shapiro and I believe DeWine in Ohio both said, we agree. This was the right. Yeah. Now they're saying, well, we're not so sure about this. Right, after the public was like, wait, what did you do? And now they're like,
you blew it up.
Wait, yeah, we weren't. And so they're changing the narrative as it goes, right? And now they're in the phase where it's Trump's fault. That's what's going on. It's Trump's fault.
Yeah, Trump did not decide to roll back or whatever these train safety features or whatever, but it's been an issue that's been going on. Why didn't the Biden administration fix it on day one then? Why did the Biden administration say, oh, look, they didn't take care of that? The Trump administration, let's go ahead and take care of that right now for our transportation. Nope, not taken care of, right, Rob? Because it's not a concern. It's not a big deal. What the biggest concern, Rob, is, there's too many white people that are in construction. That's what the biggest concern is. That's what Pete Buttigieg said. There's too many white people in construction jobs. White people are taking away jobs from inner city people inside of construction jobs. Black people can't get construction jobs because Whitey is in there taking all the jobs.
Yeah,
it's gerbs. That's what he sounds like right now.
Yeah. A brief tangent, I'll say. I lived in a small town. The first home I bought, this was several years ago, and this is how rural I am. We didn't have sewage. We had septic tanks. So they put a mainstream sewage line in, but you had to pay to dig to tap into the sewage. Well, there was a state grant, and you can get money if you were under a certain line to be able to tap into the sewage. Well, a bunch of people applied and got accepted for this grant because it's a very poor area. People don't have thousands of dollars. And the grant fell through at the last minute. Want to know why it fell through? Because the bidding process for the people that were going to dig and saying, I could do it for this price, and then someone would say I could do it lower, the bidding process did not involve a company owned by a person of color. So that meant that the people could no longer get this grant that needed it because in rural Pennsylvania, there wasn't a construction company that was owned by a person of color. That sort of thing. Now, broaden that out to a national scale of our infrastructure. You're talking about important jobs like air traffic controllers, engineers, people that are responsible for our infrastructure like welders, construction, whatever. We're now talking about the qualifications of do you know how to do the job no longer mattering. The qualification is, do you enjoy having intercourse with people of the same gender? Do you have skin that is not traditionally white? Then you're right for this job. Come on. And don't be surprised in the decades to come in the future when you see more and more of these disasters. And it'll be hard to put your finger on any one of them saying, this is because we've lowered standards. But you'll see more of them occur on average because of it.
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you real quick to Waffle Salter for becoming a member of this channel. Thank you, Waffle Salter. I appreciate the ongoing support. Thank you so much, my friend. It goes back, a former Biden administration official, discount Matt Damon, went to court today or yesterday. And he was dressed up like a man this time. So I think he was trying to do that.
Yeah, but did he steal those clothes? Did he just find those clothes like in the locker room outside the courthouse? Who knows? Who knows?
But it just shows you that those things that you just listed off have become the core qualifications of this. I read an article the other day where a man got into Yale University by just writing Black Lives Matter on his paper resume to get into that college. And they accepted him based off of just Black Lives Matter. That's all he typed in, Black Lives Matter, all the way down. And he was accepted into the university.
Well, good for him. That degree will mean nothing 20 years from now, so I hope he enjoys his time while he has it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is, I dealt with this. For those that don't know, I did policy debate in college, and this was policy debates the left of the left. So when I was debating in 2004, those people were insane like you see on colleges today. It was just in this insular community. And it was the same sort of stuff. There was this sort of, there was this lie. And that's one of the things, you'll know this better than me, as in tuned as you are with, the Bible and everything, that the insidious nature of lying and what it does. And when we have to accept these lies, we just implicitly accept them. I still debate people regularly that'll say like, well, as a black person, you can't get hired. Companies don't want to hire. It's not true. Any company worth their salt knows it's a benefit to them to hire a person of color because they could broadcast that. That's why you don't see, we could show you countless examples of people that are white pretending to be other ethnicities, but we don't see ethnicities that aren't white pretending to be white. You don't see a lot of students of color pretending to be Asian when they're sending in their application to Harvard or Yale. I wonder why that is, right? I wonder why Elizabeth Warren, as a white lady, had to pretend to be a Native American. Why is that? If this white privilege is so insidious and so powerful. And it's unfortunate not just to white people, but it's also unfortunate to the other groups as well. Because now, let's say that you happen to be black and you're an engineer, and the reason is because you were awesome, you were top of your class. There is this constant thought in the back of everyone's head that people are afraid to say, did you earn that? Or were you a diversity hire? And it's not fair to anyone. I think that the problem is that the government has created this oppressor cultural Marxist society and deemed certain populations victims. And I think the reason they do that is because they're afraid if they don't treat these people like children, that someday they'll grow up to outcompete them. So if you're listening and you're in the black community, know this. It's not that the Democrats like you. It's they're afraid that if they start treating you like children, you'll actually succeed on your own merits. And they don't want that. That's what we want. We want you to treat you as an individual, and we hope that you thrive and succeed and your family does fantastically.
Let me ask you this, Rob, since I want to kind of close this out with our with the discussion of what happened there in East Palestine. And as a resident there in Pennsylvania, you're pretty close to the thing that's happening.
Yeah.
What is the reaction to people that are on the ground there? I mean, what's your community reaction? I mean, have you heard? Are people worried? Are they angry? What's that feeling going on there? Because obviously, me living in Florida, I don't know what's happening there on the ground because, of course, they don't want real stories. I mean, I got a couple of stories that I've seen, but what are you hearing there?
So there's two types of things I'm hearing. The first is when I bring this up to people, they're like, what? Because they're not prolific on social media, and maybe the only news they get the local newspaper, or they turn on the 5 o'clock news, or they watch late night comedy. Stephen Colbert ain't talking about, you know what I mean? So there's that reaction. The other reaction I have is I know someone who works in the township outside of Pittsburgh, and so they get frequent calls about things like road safety and things like that. They've been getting a litany of calls. You know, my daughter feels sick. Is it because of East Palestine? My
Right.
car has corrosion around the wheel, I've noticed. Is it the salt that was on the road, or is it from East Palestine? So there are definitely the people that know, that have heard the story. I mean, both of these things say a lot. One, that possibly the worst environmental disaster since Chernobyl, and people 70 miles away are like, what? Like, that says a lot about our media, right? And then the other reaction where people are just frightened. Even things that me and you might chuckle about, like your car has corrosion on it, I don't think. But you can, what that shows is how fearful people are. And there is a lack of trust in these, rightfully so, by the way, in these governmental institutions. And there comes with consequences with that. Like, there are times when you want a government to be trusted, or you want an agency to be trusted. And let's say, for the sake of argument, this is one of them. What if the EPA came out tomorrow and was like, my God, everyone in 100-mile radius needs to leave? Do you know how many people would be like, I don't trust them? I don't trust them at all.
They've lost trust. Over the last 3 years has been the worst for these institutions. You know, the medical profession, the scientific profession, and even to an extent, you know, educators. Obviously, politicians are never ranked very high, but three of the most trusted professions in the country are no longer those trusted professions because of their outward lies, because they had alternative motives, because they were enslaved to big pharma in order to push, you know, their product. And I was wondering, Rob, how soon before you start seeing mask mandates in these areas, because that's the only way that you guys are going to be safe now. When is that going to be rolled out, and when are they going to roll out the vaccines to prevent the side effects of the stuff in the air, Rob? When is that happening, Rob? I need to know.
Well, it's a great question, and the spirit of the question is this: they won't take it seriously until they can exploit it for more power.
Of course.
That's the only time. So if they could find a way to monetize through Pfizer some sort of medication, then they would mandate you take it. Oh, you have to take it, or else you could spread these dangerous carcinogens that we told you were safe a week ago. You could potentially spread them if you don't take this Pfizer-approved medication, right? Then they would take it seriously. But when taking it seriously, all it does right now is looks bad for the people. It looks bad for, you know, there's so much we haven't got into. Norfolk, the rail company. It seems
they're backed by large investment companies who have it was BlackRock, Vanguard. There was a couple other ones I can't think of off the top of my head, but why would they want it?
They're intertwined with the local government as well.
Yes.
Right? So, like, think how this works. You have billionaires that fund this company, that fund our politicians, that get involved with the local places, like their fire department and stuff like that. And then an incident happens like this, and Tucker said it best last night. He's like, it would almost be like, because a woman from East Palestine was on there talking, saying, if the EPA showed up with investigators that were hired by Norfolk that was going to come in and test their property, and they said, well, we don't want the people hired by the train station to come in and say everything's fine. We want independent people. And they were like, can the EPA come in and do the test without you? And the EPA was like, no, you have to sign this disclosure form, basically, that says that, you know, and Tucker said, it would be like if we let Pfizer in charge of the FDA. Oh, wait, that's what we've done.
That's what's happening.
And it's like, do you really think the regulators are going to regulate if they're bought and paid for by the very people that they're regulating? And so the big government people are jumping on this. They're saying, see, this is why we need socialism. This is why we need more government, to have more control over crooked companies like Norfolk. I disagree. I say the way a crooked company like Norfolk gets away with it is because we already have this government that's powerful enough to pick winners and losers, and they're bought and paid for by companies like Norfolk.
And you made an interesting point about that. Is, you know, what happens is Norfolk releases a statement about the wreck. The first responders or the local government takes that response and tells it to the media. The media then repeats that same thing. So there's never a break in information coming straight from the source who does not want it to look poorly on them. And anybody that was trying to investigate, there was a couple of reporters who were arrested trying to ask more difficult questions there and tried to shine some light on what was happening there. And, you know, they've now been released by the police department there because they were unlawfully arrested. You know, just people trying to get to the truth. And we have this whole situation, and it's a terrible situation, and I don't want it to be a fearful situation, but it's a situation where we should demand consequences for what has taken place with the local government, with the federal government, and with that company that's all intertwined together because of the funding behind the BlackRock and the Vanguards and all these people who do that. So it's not a push for socialism, but it is a push for justice for these entities who have continued to downplay this. Safe and effective water, you can go ahead and drink it right out of the river. Don't worry about it, Rob. And quit if you question it. You're a bigot and you're a fascist and you're Hitler.
Yeah. And I'll say one more angle on this before, if you want to move on then, but I hesitate to even say this, right? Because the mere fact that you mentioned this could put something out into ether that you don't want to happen. I'm not saying this was an act of terrorism. I'm not saying this was an intentional sabotage. But we have seen where extremists in this country, particularly left-wing extremists, have sabotaged rail stations in Oregon, around Portland and things like that. We have seen attacks on our electrical grid through people taking pot shots at electrical grids and shutting them down.
North Carolina recently.
That's right. We've seen forest fires that have burned out of control and caused billions of dollars of damages that were allegedly started intentionally by people. If you were an adversary of the United States, whether it be domestic or foreign, our country is ran so corruptly and incompetently, we will be concerned about the borders of countries halfway around the world. We'll have military bases in hundreds of countries. We'll spend trillions of dollars on defense. And yet a match in a forest can cause more damage than any foreign government could. And yet an intentional derailment of a train could cause more damage to the people, to the earth of the United States, the environment of the United States, and financially to the United States. And so there are consequences to electing the most corrupt and the least talented people. And unfortunately, the worst that it's going to be seen is not even by us. It's going to be our children. They're going to be the ones that pay the consequences for the government that we elected. And that's unfortunate that I have so little confidence in it's not my fault I don't trust the EPA or the FBI or the CIA. It's their fault. They've shown themselves to be untrustworthy over and over again. They've shown themselves to be corrupt and incompetent. And every time a situation comes up like this, remember, our government could come together almost on a night at the drop of a hat to pass 1,000-pages bill that send trillions of dollars, billions of which are going to places like Ukraine. But they can't figure out how to keep the drinking water clean. They can't figure out how to keep people's lungs safe from train derailments and things like that. It's truly despicable.
It is, and you're absolutely right. They can come together, and that goes. I have a couple stories. I don't know which one I want to go to. Maybe we'll tackle this one first because this one really just irritated me when I saw it. It was your boy Mitch McConnell today. Here it is. Your boy. My boy. Your boy. Yeah, so everything we just talked about, right? We just talked about, the failing infrastructure of the country. We talked about, security concerns within the country. We've talked about, environmental concerns within the country. There are so many things that is so important that we should probably be focusing on, maybe not spending, like you said, trillions of dollars across the world or spending trillions of dollars on all these pet projects that just go back into the DNC somehow, into the RNC, so that way they can continue to fund the uniparty. But this is what Mitch McConnell said today. Mitch McConnell says defeating Russia in Ukraine is the single most important event going on in the world right now. Really, more important than East Palestine, more important than the inflation, more important than China and China spying on us openly and laughing at us and mocking us. That's more. All of that's more important than all of those things. And of course, our open border, Rob, our high energy cost here, Rob, and of course, all of the shortages and supply chain that we've been seeing. That Ukraine is the most important thing. How tone deaf is this from the supposed minority leader for the Republican Party in the Senate?
Well, it's tone deaf, but they also don't care. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm seeing. I talked about this in my show the other night. At least lie to me like I'm an adult. I miss the days of government treating me like an adult with their propaganda and lies. Now it's things like, John Fetterman's fine. He's fine. And you're a bigot if you disagree. Like, this isn't even a lie that you're trying with. This lie here with McConnell. This guy supposedly represents Republicans who, say what you will about the man, the de facto sort of spiritual leader of the Republicans still at this point is Donald Trump. Does this sound like a message that the average Trump populist, nationalist would embrace? the entire movement that was about America being first, protecting our country, having the concerns of Americans first and foremost. Does it sound like Mitch McConnell's representing them? No, but that's not Mitch McConnell's job. Mitch McConnell's job's not being a major player in the voice of people that are populist, that are conservative, that feel like they've been left behind for the past 50 years. That's not his job. His job is to continue to advocate for the uniparty. And to the uniparty, to the globalists, this is one of the biggest issues, right? They need to continue that never-ending spigot of money that they could launder to their friends, to, the president's son and John Kerry's son. And they need to keep that spigot going. They have to keep rushing it, right? And so it doesn't even make sense that Russia's the biggest geopolitical threat. That would be China by a long shot. But they can't criticize China as much. Why? Well, because they're involved in China with the creation of, there was some virus or something that came through a couple of years. We can't really talk about it on YouTube, but I remember some virus or something that was created in China. Oh, what's that? The United States partially funded that lab while people like Mitch McConnell and stuff knew about it and let it go. So they can't talk about that. They can't talk about China because China's got their tentacles in so many of these campaigns and financial symbiotic relationships with these people. So yeah, it's just slap in the face. The Ukraine situation has always been this. Americans, we need to sacrifice more. We know you sacrificed during lockdowns. We know you sacrificed because of inflation, but it's time to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and sacrifice more. Oh, and by Americans, we mean poor and working class people, not us. We'll continue to thrive, but you all need to you're too comfortable. You need to make more sacrifices. It's a slap in the face of anybody who votes Republican. And, I'm sorry to say this, until leadership changes in the Republican Party, you could go to the polls as strongly as you want. If we crawl over broken glass to get Republican majorities and they don't govern in a way to end this corruption and to care about the people of America first, then it'll all be in vain.
Yeah, you're right about that. And it's funny you talk about how, we struggle to, get these majorities in Republican control and stuff like that. And then how do they repay you? They send all of your tax dollars overseas to help those individuals and not help the things in here. And I didn't know if you knew this or not, Rob, but eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner is white supremacy. I didn't know if you knew that or not. That was a recent article put out there by a leftist media rag out there. And also, this wasn't from one of those outlier media. So this was from the Wall Street Journal. Eating breakfast, you should consider skipping breakfast to save money.
Trust the science. All my life, I've been told by the science that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Now they're like, shit, you don't need that. Like, breakfast, that's for white supremacists. Why don't you skip that? Maybe you should skip lunch and dinner too, right? Like, we all have to do our part. I mean, it's really incredible. And this is one thing, I know we're getting off the Mitch McConnell, but sort of tangentially to that. One of the signs that you look for is, imagine being a Biden supporter right now. Right? And you're struggling economically. Your wages have not increased with inflation, and you're really struggling, and you're leaving. Go ahead.
It would be easy to be a Biden supporter, man. I could just blame everything on Trump, and my life would be easy. Yeah, I know. I'm paying $8 for gas. It's Trump's fault, though. It's Putin's fault, so I'm okay with it. I'm helping Ukraine.
We could have Democrats elected to every office for the next 50 years, and 51 years from now, when inflation's insane and stuff, they'd be like, Trump. It's Trump. It's still Trump's fault. 50 years ago, Trump. But no, imagine being one of these Biden supporters, and you're like, okay, I'm struggling. I'm going to tune into the State of the Union. What's the president say? Where's my relief that's coming? And what's the Biden message on the economy? It's doing great. It's like the greatest economy ever. Well, that hardly inspires you that help's on the way, huh? When you're being told, it must be your fault because the economy's great. Don't believe your lying eyes. It's you that's the problem. It's not the guy. And that's sort of like what gets me is you would think even the people that you may massively disagree with, if they're in positions of leadership, if they weren't tone deaf, what they would be saying right now is, we know these past 3 years have been incredibly trying. And we know that when we ask in these difficult times, can we continue to send billions to Ukraine? That's a big ask. And we thank you so much for understanding why it's important, but we understand why there's questions. And so we're going to be as transparent as possible. But that's not what they do. They're like, what are you, pro-Putin? You like Putin? You love Putin? You're against this? Even if you just have reasonable questions. I know people that I debated that were like 9 months ago, we're like, well, these billions we sent are okay, but no more. Where are those people at today? Right? Like 9 months later. And it's like, even they that were calling me pro-Putin for denying the initial funds, now they're getting called pro-Putin. And it's like, do you see where this is going? But yeah, I mean, it's terrible that I loved McConnell's Ukrainian colored tie at the State of the Union. That really helped inspire confidence in me as well, you know?
Yeah. Hey, thank you, Ivan Adams, for the $2 super chat you sent in. I do appreciate it so much. Thank you for supporting the channel. And you know, Rob, it's you know, parody, but you know, our good friend Drone Tech does an excellent job in this, and how he picks up how the media was supposed to be that fourth estate, to be a check on government, right? Hold truth to power. And instead, they run articles like, this is why inflation's good for you, or this is why you should stop eating breakfast, or why a nuclear war would be great for the environment. It's like, it's everything's so inverse. And, you know, you and I are pretty close friends, but he's just fantastic. I know he pulls his hair out because he probably feels like he's talking about the same thing every single day, because that's how I would feel that way. Sometimes I do feel that way with some of the stories I run. I'm like, man, I feel like I just talked about this, you know? And it's always the same people that will sit there and hold these people. Like John Fetterman's so brave and stunning because he was running because he had mush for his brain. And you're a bigot for even questioning why he is there. But now, Rob, I know he's your senator, and I know you're a big Fetterman supporter in that
Love
state
the
there. Love the hoodie. Just the everyday man, right? The everyday man. And now he's back in the hospital. God bless his soul, man. I don't want to see him, you know, suffer. However, I put the blame on the Democrat Party. I put the blame on his wife for, again, abuse of this individual who had a stroke, Rob, right after the primaries. In Pennsylvania, or right before the primary, primary.
Yeah.
And he had a stroke, and then he got some quack doctor to come out and say, oh yeah, he's fine. And everybody's looking at him like, he can't, you know, we know John Fetterman, he's not a brilliant guy to begin with, but that John Fetterman's brilliant compared to this John Fetterman. And now, you know, he was rushed to the hospital, you know, last week or 2 weeks ago, he was rushed to the hospital. So they were concerned about some stuff with, you know, ongoing stroke problems. And now he's in the hospital again, this time because he's clinically depressed. And you know why he's clinically depressed? You might know this, and maybe even the chat knows this, is when you suffer a stroke, Rob, or some disabilitating something that happens where you can no longer function the way you used to be able to function. It frustrates you. And then that frustration turns into anger. And then that anger turns into depression. Yeah. That's where he's at. He's in depression right now because these people lied to him, pushed him through anyway, and said, "No, it's all good. It's all for power. We got to get this seat. We got to just do it for the party, John. Do it for the party." And you know what, Giselle, if he has to go down, I'll appoint you special senator for John until we hold an election here in Pennsylvania, and you'll be the senator. You'll be the first female senator from Pennsylvania. What breaking that glass ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot to say here. Let me say this.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I truly mean this. From the bottom of my heart, I mean this. I hope that he makes a full recovery. I truly believe that, you know, whether you're Christian or not, right? Like, there are bad things that come to you if you wish bad things on people. I do not wish bad things on him. I do not wish bad things on Joe Biden. I hope they leave office and have long, fulfilling lives with their grandkids and are very happy. I mean,
stay out of shower for Joe.
Yeah. But I seriously mean, I don't wish ill to him. But let me say a couple things. First, there's a very important distinction here, because the line that you hear from Fetterman supporters will be something like this, you know, well, he was just the ultimate team player. He won the nomination, then he had a stroke, and so he had to stick it out to stop the Republicans from winning the seat. So you could respect, if you're a Democrat supporter, that he put his health on the line for that. That's not what happened. He had the stroke before the primary. If he was a team player, what he should have done was withdrawn before the primary, which will allow another Democrat to win the primary, and then that Democrat could have challenged Mehmet Oz for the seat. And so if you're a Democrat, you should be furious that John Fetterman misled the American public and the Pennsylvania public, claiming that this was no big deal, only to find out after the crack started. I believe it was an ABC reporter that was the first to report, like,
yes,
something's not right here. And then she was attacked by Fetterman's wife, and all of these other media people were like, oh, what is this woman talking about? And then we all saw at the debate what happened. So that's number one. Fetterman deserves sympathy in the fact that I don't want anyone who's ill to be ill, but he was selfish. And now we as Pennsylvanians suffer because of that. Number two is this. The depression that you talked about is absolutely true. But to add on top of that, Not just the frustration of maybe not understanding people like you used to, and maybe coming to the unfortunate realization you never will again. You may never get better, right? That's got to be depressing. But imagine on top of that, the anxiety of speaking in front of millions of people. That could cause depression in people. Then imagine this, that you have millions of people just like me and you that are watching him going, my God, look how bad he is. If me and you have a stroke, we might see reactions from our family that realize the incapacitated we're in, and that might affect us. But imagine everyone in the world seeing it. Imagine it. And so that's why I say to the people in the Democratic Party, in the media, to the family members of John Fetterman that encouraged him to keep going, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. You caused the deterioration of this man's health, and you don't care. And that's the last thing I want to say about this is, make no mistake about it. We have this establishment, and it is uniparty. You're right about that. Though the Democrats are the face of it. There are good Republicans. There's basically no good Democrats at the national level, right? Like that's just the way it is. But understand this. This institution, the establishment, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, it's bigger than any one person. The institution will exist long after Joe Biden's gone, long after Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump are gone. These institutions will exist. They don't care about individuals, not even the individuals that do their bidding. They don't care. As soon as John Fetterman is a liability to them, he has outlived his usefulness. He stopped Dr. Oz from winning that seat. It only took a month for the New York Times to write a story like, oh boy, this guy's having serious health. 2 months before that, they were telling us everything's fine and you're a bigot for questioning it. And now as soon as he's sworn in, they're like, okay, yeah, we knew all along this was a really bad idea. Those people knew that his health was being sacrificed, but they didn't care. And so I hope that if you're out there on the offshot that you're a Democratic senator watching right now and you know how corrupt things are, they will throw you under the bus as soon as, make no mistake about it. So if you're aware of this corruption, let's see more whistleblowers from the Senate. Let's see more whistleblowers from the FBI and the State Department, because they will crush you as soon as you outlive your usefulness.
Now, Rob, let me ask you a question because I'm not totally brushed up on Pennsylvania politics and how things are ran there. If John Fetterman would no longer be able to fulfill his duties and would have to step down, what is the resolution for the governor in your state, who is Josh Shapiro? What role does he play in that?
I believe, now I could be wrong, so I'd have to double check this, but my understanding is he would appoint an interim senator that basically would hold that office until the next general election. Now, this seat, obviously, Senate seats are for 6 years. So this seat that Fetterman currently holds, if he was not stepping down from office, he would maintain that seat for 6 years. And the other Senate seat would be up in 2 years here in Pennsylvania. So in 2024, there'll be another Senate race. If Fetterman has to withdraw, the governor would appoint a senator, and then that seat would be up again in 2024 for a 4-year term, right? So it wouldn't be for an additional.
Gotcha.
So what would be, people think that he would appoint Fetterman's wife, and then she would be senator for 2 years, and then presumably would defend her seat in 2024, along with the other Senate seat in Pennsylvania being defended.
Right.
So that's how it would work. They wouldn't get to hold on to that seat for 6 years. It would only be until the next general election, which in this case would be 2024.
Real quick, and this was my theory, and I've read some other stories that point to this. But do you believe that Josh Shapiro would appoint his wife as to fulfill that seat?
That's what I think would happen. It seems it's very reminiscent of like some FDR stuff, where the wife was really. I mean, even maybe I just because I live in Pennsylvania, I remember this story. But you remember when Biden came to Pennsylvania, and then the Fettermans toured Air Force One, but all the pictures was just Fetterman's wife. It was like,
I do remember that.
It was like, this is the person really running the show, and it seems evident. And she's an interesting character. We don't have time to get into it, but there's a lot. She's a very radical person. She's an immigrant, right? And
is she from Jersey?
I think so. Like Oz, like Dr. Oz.
Like Oz, right?
and, I'll say this real quick. Like, there's so many things. I have a friend that I still give the business to because he voted for Fetterman. He sent in an early mail-in ballot before the debates. And he called me debate night and was like, I've made a huge mistake, right? Because this is someone who would be willing to vote Republican or Democrat, and he decided to go with Democrat. And then when he found out how bad Fetterman was, he was like, I regret my vote. So there's also a question of this does illustrate the problem with early voting, where, like, all you have to do is get someone, because early voting is almost never going to be about the particular candidate or particular positions.
It's all about
gonna
party.
be, what party are you? And so you'll be able to put people in that are imminently not qualified, but early voting, by the time you get around to seeing them speak and realizing, oh my goodness, they're a vegetable, it's too late. And when you look at Pennsylvania, there were hundreds of thousands of ballots that came in before that first debate, and the margin of victory was well over the margin of victory. So, I mean, there's just so much with this story. But the big thing about this story is this. The media, the establishment, people that control the narrative will lie to you about the most obvious things with a straight face. That's what this story shows. And it's unfortunate for John Fetterman that his health, he was selfish, but his health significantly, it seems like, was impacted by that. And everyone that pushed him along with this ought to feel ashamed of themselves. They really should.
Yeah, I'm waiting for his wife to block me on Twitter. I told her basically you should be ashamed of what you did to your husband just now. So I'm presuming I'll get a block here soon. But check this out, Rob. Since we're over here on YouTube, I thought this was key here. CNBC and other news outlets were reporting YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki says she is stepping down. That's right. Susan, are you watching? Why are you stepping down, Susan? YouTube Susan Wojcicki said Thursday that she is stepping down. Neil Mohan, Chief Product Officer, will take the lead as Senior Vice President and new head of YouTube. So I don't know much of Neil Mohan. What's your thoughts on this, Rob? What do you think?
My first thought is Susan's last act out the door was probably personally demonetizing you. She's like, before I go.
like go see this guy again over here.
Get him out. This reminds me a lot of Dorsey stepping down. So there's several things you could look into this. I'll say the most obvious first. Just like when Dorsey stepped down, don't think that, I don't know anything about this new guy, but it would be a mistake to think like, oh, he'll be more even-handed. Probably not the case. My guess is that it'll follow a similar pattern with Twitter, which is I think that people like Dorsey and people like, how do you say her name? I can never pronounce
Wojcicki.
Wojcicki?
Wojcicki, yeah.
I think she probably...
Wow, I actually helped somebody pronounce a name.
You did it. But I think that she probably sees the writing on the wall, that there's going to be some congressional investigations, and she's wanting to clear her hands to get ready for that as best as she can. And I also think that when this happens, the way that these companies, what they do is they'll double down by putting someone who's even more obviously propagandist in the seat. And it'll be like, Susan will be the face just like Dorsey was of Dorsey, like, oh no, we're not shadow banning anyone. I'm just this happy-go-lucky sort of hippie billionaire that was just trying to make the world a better place. Sorry that we accidentally swung an election for the Democrats. My bad, I feel bad about it. And then Parag or whatever, the guy they brought in after him, was like, no free speech for these evil conservatives. That's what I look to, like, this situation will probably be, that Susan leaving's not a sign of like, oh, YouTube's turning over a new leaf. It's probably a sign of doubling down and giving Susan the chance to get ready for some testimony in front of the House, which, I hate to burst everyone's bubble, will probably be a lot of fire and thunder and strongly worded letters by Lindsey Graham and amount to nothing.
Well, it's coming from the House, so this is how I told my viewers. And by the way, my wife chimed in just a second. They're on the screen. Telling that's the first time Frank's ever been asked how to say a word.
Glad to be of help. I'm glad.
This is what I've kind of told my viewers. After the omnibus bill that passed right at the beginning of the year, that was to fund the government halfway through this year, right? All the way to, I think, June, before the next budget. So really the House has nothing to do at the moment outside of hearings. So what the House is currently doing, this is how I looked at it, and I could be, maybe a little bit more optimistic than others. But what they're doing is, okay, well, we can't do anything with the purse strings at the moment. But what we can do is we can go ahead and start doing these hearings, start bugging these people, and start compiling all of these testimonies. And then as we get our purse strings back at the midterm here or midway through the year, now we can start holding some of these other government agencies to account, because we have the purse strings. Now we can do something that would be effective. But right now we have to go ahead, and in the meantime, we're just going to go ahead and start compiling testimonies of all these individuals and these companies. And now when we have the purse strings, when we got to make that budget out, now we can go after these people full tilt. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's certainly a possibility, but I have to admit, people who throw terms around like black-pilled. I'm sort of black-pilled on our government institutions at this point. I think that I see light in the next 4 to 6 to 8 years. But like in this point, however, I'm very, very much enthusiastic about culturally what's happening in this country and people having a return, the pendulum swinging back to a return to religion, to return to more conservative values. I think people are getting fed up in many ways, and you're starting to see that. And that's more important. But on this issue specifically, it's entirely possible that I could be wrong. And I'm not 100% guaranteeing anything. And maybe you're absolutely right. This is what would happen. I think what's more likely to happen is Kevin McCarthy is sort of sees the pushback that he got from Matt Gaetz and others and how popular it was with the base of the Republican Party. So right now he's paying lip service. He's like, go ahead and do your investigations. Absolutely. I'm on board. I'm outraged. And I think at the end of the day that they will uncover a bunch of stuff, just like we're seeing in the Twitter files, that shows just how corrupt a lot of these agencies were, a lot of these corporations were working with government entities. But ultimately, I think when push comes to shove and it's time for consequences, I think you'll see Kevin McCarthy, and certainly in the Senate, the Republicans will probably be like, well, the important thing is getting that information out to the American people. That's not the important thing. In one sense it is, but that was also important under the Trump administration. We saw how corrupt the FBI was. There was collusion. There was Russia collusion. It was the Hillary camp colluding with a known Russian spy named Igor Dushenko to create the Trump-Russia collusion story. And then the FBI hired Dushenko, someone they suspected of being a spy, to be a confidential informant so that he couldn't be investigated under Freedom of Information Act. That's Russian collusion. That's what happened. And it subverted the 2018 and 2020 elections. Our FBI and the Hillary Clinton camp did that, colluded with Russians to do that, right? And all that information's public. And what are the consequences? Like, anyone held account? Did the Durham investigation do anything? No, they tried a couple of periphery people. They didn't go after anyone at the top of the FBI. They didn't go after anyone in the Obama administration. They went after a couple of periphery people for low-level crimes that a D.C. jury was never going to convict with anyways. So until I see different, I will be the first. I will come on your show, eat crow happily, and cheer that this corruption's finally taking the first steps to get dealt with. But until I see the first people face legal consequences for these sorts of things, I'm not optimistic that it'll happen through government. I think what's more likely to happen is it'll happen through the user base, and it'll happen through people that just say, we're fed up with these products. We're going to start pushing for other groups like Rumble and things like that. And I think you're going to see a crop of very talented people start to come up as content providers on these alternative platforms that realize, not even necessarily agreeing with us ideologically, but just understand this is where I go for skill. And if I'm relying on kissing the butt of the corporate interest, then I'll suck up to YouTube. Now, let me say as a brief caveat to that, you're absolutely right to stay on YouTube because they'll have to drag me away kicking and screaming. I don't care. I'm going to continue to use these platforms that hate me to spread a message of just how correct my worldview is and how corrupt they are. And when they kick me off, fine, they kick me off. But that's my intention, to stay on the platform because I could reach the most people on it.
Yeah, I have this comment here. I thought it was pretty Breyer here says, you two need to do more lives together. This is one of the most knowledgeable and entertaining lives I've seen you do, Frank. The two of you work well together. Hey, thank you.
I couldn't agree more. I love doing streams with Frank. Maybe we could make it like at least a monthly show. I would love it. I would absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's been a long time since Rob and I, but it just shows that we still have that chemistry. Check the story out here, Rob. Idaho. If you don't know, Idaho has there's parts in Northern California and I believe Oregon that are looking to break away from those states and create a larger Idaho. Idaho legislature passes a bill to move Idaho-Oregon border to include large swath of eastern Oregon. This is the Greater Idaho Plan. What do you think about this?
I think it's interesting. I don't know the legal ramifications of how it would occur. I've heard other such, like California, there's always people suggesting breaking it into several smaller states or sending parts of it to more rural communities because we don't, it's difficult for people that don't live in these areas to understand just how different the states could be. Pennsylvania's like that. Like in Pennsylvania where I live, you have Pittsburgh on one end, Philly on the other, Erie's up north, and then they call the rest of us in central Pennsylvania, they call us Pencil-tucky. Right? Because we're like redneck. Like that's what it's two vastly different states. That's what you see in places like Oregon, right? Where, yeah, you're in the Portland area and things like that. It is the lefties of the left, right? But then there's large swaths of just beautiful land there in Oregon that are rural communities that are overwhelmingly dictated to by the mass amounts of population in these cities like Portland. And they far more have in common with the people of the great state of Idaho. But I don't know. My presumption would be there would have to be some sort of agreement with the state of Oregon to say we will willfully give this land up, which I don't think is going to happen. And I certainly don't think that there's going to be any sort of military conflict between Idaho and Oregon. But I mean,
could that happen though? Could that happen? Could there be a Idaho invasion of their National Guard into Oregon, and we're going to occupy this? We're liberating the greater part of Oregon to Idaho in the name of Idaho. We plant our flag here.
Yeah. People with like potato sacks and pitchforks versus a bunch of hippies smelling of patchouli. It'd be quite the conflict, you know. But yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, when you think about it, like this gets into this metaphysical conversation of like, well, what makes a Pennsylvanian a Pennsylvanian and an Idahoan and an Idahoan, right? Like,
right.
There are often times where like you can't tell me that the people in rural Oregon aren't more similar to the average Idahoan than they are to the average Portlander, you know. And so the question is like, are these borders, in a sense, arbitrary in that the government people are getting isn't representative of their communities? And, you know, you feel bad for these left-wing or these, you know, right-wing people or rural people in states like Oregon or in states like California, where it's like, they're great people too. And listen, I understand the argument. I know there's a lot of people move out of there. It's not that simple. You know, maybe you live in a third generation home. You don't want to leave the home that you grew up in, and you've settled down roots there, and your kids are in school, you know.
I invite the National Guard here in Florida to invade southern Georgia, and we can liberate southern Georgia from the rest of Georgia. The southern part of Georgia has so much more in common with the northern part of Florida than the rest of Georgia. So yeah, we would love to go ahead and do that. I think we should see more of that, more of these National Guards crossing into these other states and taking hold of land there and saying, this is now our land.
Well, how about this, right? Because the Ivory Tower people are always telling us how much better city life is than rural life. So like in Pennsylvania, we'll give Ohio, Philly, and Pittsburgh, and then you give us all the farmland in the center there. We'll call that the map might look a little weird, you know, but I'll take the land any day over those cities, you know. It's not to say there's not great people in the cities or beautiful cities, but you know, I make this pitch all the time. I really do, Frank. I was doing a car stream the other day, and part of what I was doing was driving through a drive-through to pick. I always take my wife when I do block shifts, so when I finally get to come home from work, I like to take my wife lunch. And I was explaining, as the nice drive-through lady handed out my food, how awesome the people in my little town are. Even that work at fast food joints, always friendly. Like 99% of the time you interact with someone, it's positive. And I'm like explaining to my audience, I'm like, what are you city people doing? Come move here. If you own a small business, come to my town, man. We'll take you in. You know, it really is. But instead, we'll get a bunch of lefties that are fleeing Philly that are like, how come no guys are wearing dresses here? I feel left out. You know, like that's the people we'll get. And then you're just like, oh boy.
Yeah, no, for sure. I feel the same way when I head into one of the surrounding cities and where I live, and you go in and I'm looking around. My son's like, he's just shaking his head. He's like, Dad, can we go back home? Can we go back to the country?
It is the way that the mindset of so many of these left-wing people and what they've done to cities. But there is something else going on that's like, when you're surrounded by people consequently, it's like a human defense mechanism to tune things out. Like when I go into the city, I'm always shocked to see homeless people. I feel terrible. I'm like, are you all right? Like I have friends that are from the city, like, dude, just move on. Because to them, they're like, it's probably someone that's like in a bad situation with drugs or like, you can't change the world like that. So we just walk over. But to me, it's like, my goodness, if we saw a person in my little town on the sidewalk, there'd be 20 people pulling their car over. Like, are you all right? Is everything okay?
You need help?
Yeah, it's just a different mindset. And in my particular field, I work with people with developmental disabilities like autism and stuff. I see the greatest people when I go out with the people I work with are just minimum wage workers that work at places like Walmart that treat the people I work with like human beings. You know, the doctors treat them like patients, but the people in town treat them like regular day human beings. And it means the world to them. And so I wouldn't change it for the world. I love living in rural Pennsylvania. I love living in rural America. I think I'm amongst the luckiest person that's ever lived to have not only a great family, but a great community. I really do appreciate it.
I have a question here for you, and I don't live in Pennsylvania, so I don't know. Hasn't a town in Pennsylvania been on fire for the past 20 years?
So someone's going to have to fact check me on the name of this town, but it is the town that is referenced in the original Silent Hill movie. And yes, there is a town that there was these coal mines that were on that caught fire, and they just basically left the town. So it's not like the town's on fire, like there are buildings still on fire, but there are these caves, and I forget the name. Someone's saying Centralia. Yeah, my friend Robert here, who's from Harrisburg. So yeah, it does exist. That's absolutely true. Now, I haven't looked into this for the past 4 or 5 years, but last I checked, yeah, there it is, Centralia.
Yeah.
It's a true story. Yeah. Watch the movie Silent Hill, as bad as it is, but that's what they're referencing, that town that was on fire. Yeah.
That's amazing, Rob. That is amazing to have a town like that in your neck of the woods there. So would you be agrees then? Would you support the idea of states, national guards going in and liberating these other states rurally going in? Is that a plan that you would argue the next time you go with head to head with your lefties? You're like, oh yeah, I'm all for our national guard to invade our neighboring state.
First off, it's Centralia with an R. But no, I wouldn't. And I have to say no, seriously, because some lefty will clip this and be like, oh, Rob, I thought you were against when we were violent. Now you're saying that you want a violent insurrection. No, that's not what I want. I will tell you a serious thing that I would call for. So little known that there is something called a constitutional convention, a convention of the states, and it's written into our Constitution that I believe it's
Article 5.
Right. If 3/4 of the states vote to hold a convention of the states, then that convention of the states sort of I don't want to use the word usurps, surpasses our Congress, right? And that convention would then convene to pass new legislation. And I absolutely support that. I think that it's something that needs to be talked about more. And I think that we probably are at least 55-60% of red states that you could convince the population of those states that would be something to do. So hopefully we get there someday, because I think that our federal government's out of control, and the most positive governmental changes we'll see will occur locally. Then it'll occur states, like you see in Florida, it's doing so well, and then federal will come far down the line. So.
Yeah, I mean we're on the we're starting to look more and more like the city states of Greece, right? Back in the day, that we're so fractured now throughout the country. It's almost reminiscent to me, Rob, as it was back in the 1800s, back of when people were in their own state, and that they valued their state more than they valued the nation itself, because the state was more their identity than the actual country was. And I you're starting to kind of see that again in parts of the country where people are valuing their state more so, which is good, because your state has a lot more power than the federal government in a lot of senses over your everyday life. What's it going to take? Are we heading down that road for a peaceful divorce, or is that off the option for you as an American? You don't want to see a peaceful divorce. You want to see us continue on as the United States of America.
Well, I would rather the latter, but I think that given what the likely outcomes are, I think that maybe a peaceful separation is the best we could hope for. Now, I'll hold out optimism for keeping the union together. I will. But, I mean, at some point, it's just becoming obvious that the people in charge, we could talk about East Palestine. There's even greater examples of just the blatantness of there are certain groups through this cultural Marxism that they push that they've deemed non-desirables. And I don't know how you could continue to exist. I mean, I used to think it was funny. I enjoy foreign politics, TV shows, as weird as that sounds. So I used to watch Question Time a lot in the UK, or Canada has a similar system where basically the prime minister will stand up, and it's like it's very formal, like the great gentleman from wherever, would speak, and he'd say, Mr. Prime Minister, you've talked about the economy, yet inflation is up 6 months, and like every, and then the honorable right prime minister, and then he'll respond, and there's a back. I like that stuff.
They do that in Canada.
Yeah, they do it in Canada. They do it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Joe Biden standing up in front of Congress and like Matt Gaetz asking a question? Holy cow! But it would not go. But one of the things in the UK in that, and then sort of UK television about politics, they talked about all the time was, what does it mean to be British, right? Because the British isn't people with British ancestry anymore. Surely not. Like the landscape of what Britain looks like, the average person for Britain is very diverse ethnicity-wise, religion-wise, for better or worse. Like, I'm not really here to talk about that. So the question that they're really asking is, well, what identifies us as British if we could all be a different religion? And that, to me, is an even better question about America, because what made America America to me was the fundamental idea that our Constitution was formulated on, which was individualism, right? That you and your family unit could aspire to be what you wanted, and through the sweat of your brow could work yourself up. And so instead of a lord owning the land or the church owning the land, it was the individual. And as we'll set boundaries that say individuals can't do certain negative things to each other, but that's the idea. But we all were cohesive. Even when we were back in the 1800s, we were cohesive as the Union, as a country. What makes an American now? We can't even have one national anthem. We can't even have that. So what is it? It's not being white. It's not European ancestry. It's not being Christian.
We
right?
can't even agree on what a woman is.
Right. So it's like, what is it? If it's, you would say British for the Britons for the British, Spain for the Spanish, America for... There's no ethnicity. There's no religion. So what is it? There has to be a cohesive idea. And half the country thinks that we shouldn't have borders. Half the country thinks that we should talk sexuality to children. Like, so what is it that makes us... The bifurcation increases every year, and it started really badly with Obama, right? Mm-hmm. The more we focus on these identity politics and sort of cultural Marxism and instilling this into our cultural values at every level, the more that bifurcation occurs. And as always, what the establishment does, particularly the Democrats, they accuse you of exactly what they're doing. So when you notice the culture war and you say, well, we need to fight back, they say, it's always culture war with you. Right, because it's always culture war with you. And so we didn't start it, but we're damn sure going to try to finish it, because we're not going to accept you indoctrinating our children. We're not going to accept you lying us into world wars. We're going to do our best to stop it, God willing. And, the fact that we speak up about it and then we're told that we're the crazy cranks that just want to insert our idea into everything culturally. No, we were happy to be left alone, but you wouldn't leave us alone. And so now it's not the same old Republican Party. Sure, at the top level, the rhinos and stuff, but not people like me and you. We're not going to peacefully sit there and say, oh, okay, you teach my children whatever you want in school. No, those days are done, and I'm happy for it.
Aircraft said being British means bad dental hygiene, by the way.
Listen to this guy. Let's see his teeth next time he's on stream.
And Susie Lou says Google says menstruation happens in random bodies regardless of gender.
Well, just remember that Google's where 95% of people are going for their information. So if they're willing to feed you that line on that topic, imagine what they're willing to tell you about, war with Russia or, lockdown advocacy and stuff like that. And that's something to remember. Like, take that Fetterman story. The same people that told you he was perfectly fine and you were a bigot for questioning it are also the people that are telling you job growth happened this month. And you're okay as long as you have a mask on. And, well, we have to send more money to Ukraine. And the border is actually secure. And that Chinese weather balloon was no big deal. It was, and there's UFOs everywhere. In East Palestine, what's East Palestine? Never even heard of it. It's those same people controlling
That's in the Middle East.
Right. So when you can see
Middle
how
East.
big they're like. But trust them, they were really got to the bottom of that Epstein thing, right? They got there.
Well, let me tell you this. Chris Cuomo, this dude was he's pretty hinged individual, right? He got it all put together. Remember when he freaked out on that guy during the COVID lockdowns in New York City, and the guy's like, "Hey, Cuomo, where's your mask at?" And he threatened to beat the dude up.
Yeah, I do.
Well, this doesn't surprise me. This headline here, when I saw this, I was like, "Oh yeah, I could totally see this." Chris Cuomo says, "I was going to take everybody out and myself after being fired from CNN."
I mean, what was his brother's motto? I'm going to pinch the butts of everyone. That was his brother as governor, right? Like, I mean, it's amazing the sort of unhinged. Like, let me just say this in general, not to rip
that might be his white rage showing, maybe.
Right, yeah, of course.
Get Gerald Milley on that.
Cuomo specifically, but just in general, have you ever noticed that these unhinged lefties that screamed about Trump every day, people like Cuomo, how miserable they all are? They're all miserable. Like, all these people I debate, it's amazing to me. It's like, if you follow me and you watch me debate lefties and you're like, here's Rob yelling his head off at some lefty again, you might be like, this guy's a miserable person. To me, it's cathartic. Like, I do this. I have the greatest family. I'm a very happy person. So many of these left-wing people, you'd be like, Chris Cuomo, popular guy in a sense, right?
Yeah.
Wealthy. I don't think he's missing many meals or like doesn't have a roof over his head. Like that's a lot of people went to school hoping that they could be as successful as Chris Cuomo, and he's
I think
miserable.
his greatest moment, his greatest moment, Rob, was exiting the basement after his COVID, what was it, quarantine. Remember that?
truly a messiah for the mask generation, rising from a Lazarus, rising from the pits of his basement. Only he was out there bothering bicyclists. You know, they didn't tell you that.
Trying to beat him up, throwing him down the stairs.
You remember the ridiculous weightlifting videos he used to do?
Yeah, I did.
He'd be like, yeah, I'm just here pumping iron. Tune into my show tomorrow night. It's like, okay, dude. You
maybe I should make videos. Maybe I should make videos of me working out and telling people to come subscribe to my channel and hang out with me
just
later.
Get, like, blatantly inflatable weights, so it looks like you're pumping like 200 pounds. Like, strap, let's be frank. You know,
well, you know, and I'm
you'd get demonetized for medical misinformation. You know, they'd be like, he's not lifting properly there. Let's call Susan up. She'll get him out again. You
know. Rusty wants to know where they can find you, Rob.
Oh, that's a great question. So I'm on many platforms. You can find me at robnoerr on Twitch. So twitch.tv/robnoerr. I'm also Normal America on YouTube and on Rumble. Those are the 3 places you can find me most often. I usually stream live around 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays. And I have a new show that's going to be on the network, The Crucible, on Saturday evenings. It's a debate panel show. That's going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, where I'll be the moderator, which is unfortunate because I love debating. But, you know, I think I'm a pretty good moderator, too. So it should be a lot of fun. But thanks for asking. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Rob's a great guy. Definitely check him out. I also linked his channel down in the description down below, so you guys can go follow him over there. Did you see that video, Rob? I'm looking to pull it up here in just a second, but did you see that video from Chelsea Handler talking about how great it is to be a single woman in her late 50s? Did you see that video?
Yeah, I mean, so let me. Say
Isn't that depressing? Isn't that depressing?
I wonder how much of it is she knows it's depressing and it was like laughing at herself. But even at that level, it's truly a shame what feminism has done to so many women. I'm not saying that we're born and you are expected to do whatever you are based on the sex that you were born. So if you're a woman, you never have a job. I'm not saying that, right? But let's not kid ourselves. The reason that human history had defined rules for men and women was that it worked, particularly in a family type setting. It really did. I am incredibly fortunate to have a fantastic wife and son, and my wife actually gets to be a stay-at-home mom, which I think is incredibly important. Not everyone's that, because we live in such a crappy society that sometimes both parents have to work. But this video, I'll shut up and we could watch it. Like this video, it just shows you just how hollow the lives of these people are. For goodness sakes, have kids, you know?
Yeah, so, you know, Sparky, I think, put it best, celebrating being a cat lady. Yeah, for sure. So, okay, we'll take a listen to this and then we'll react a little bit more to it. I actually haven't seen the whole video myself. I've just seen a part of it. So this is actually my first time watching it all the way.
Strap in. Yeah.
Here we go.
This is a day in the life of a childless woman. I wake up at 6 a.m. I remember that I have no kids to take to school, so I take an edible, masturbate, and go back to sleep. I wake up at 12:30 p.m. and get ready for a busy day of doing whatever the I feel like. I put on my most impractical and stylish shoes, since I won't be chasing a child around the grocery store. I go to my fave spot in Paris to grab a croissant. I do a meditation sesh on the plane since I have no screaming kids, allowing me all the time in the world to become enlightened. The weightlessness of my existence has granted me superhuman powers. I teleport myself back home. Then I get ready for a night out with whatever hot guy I met on Raya that morning. I call up a babysitter and tell her that I don't need her since I still don't have kids. Now it's time for a workout, so I hit Mount Everest for a quick climb. I invent a time machine, go back in time, and kill Hitler. Freeze, you bastard! It's amazing what you can do when you have this much free time. And that's a day in the life of a childless woman.
Wow, Rob. That is depressing.
Yeah, I mean, she has a time machine and she stopped at killing Hitler. And wasn't there a bunch of other stuff? Couldn't you have ended slavery or something while you're at it, Chelsea? Come on, you don't have a kid to hold you back. Now, I mean, I get what she's doing. Like, the joke is this. Like, obviously she's being tongue-in-cheek, but the joke is, oh, it's so liberating to not have a kid. How old is she? She's like in her 50s, right?
Yeah, she's in her 50s, yeah.
You want to know what her life would be like if she had a kid when she was like 25? She'd be hanging out with grandkids right now and be the greatest thing that ever happened to her.
Of course.
Lie to you. Having a kid's difficult, right? Like, I have a 2-year-old, and I was late.
It's rewarding.
Right.
Rewarding.
It's certainly it's the best decision I ever made. But it's not like no work. The criticism of, oh my gosh, sometimes you get stressed out. Absolutely true. And it costs a lot of money. Also true. But the rewards by far surpass any of the cost of it. And, you know, I know that the joke she's getting at is like, I could have a career and I could do all this fun stuff because I don't have a kid. But what you find is that stuff's all hollow. Right? It doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day. And I think that,
at the end of the day, Rob, when you die in your work, you know, you die and you can't go to work, you know, your work will be sad maybe for a couple minutes. They'll say, oh, you so and so just passed away. Well, guess what? Work continues.
Yeah. And I mean,
and who was there for you?
You know, something like a little personal to me, when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, my grandma and grandpa on my dad's side were put into a nursing home. And my grandma passed away about a year and a half before my grandpa. But religiously, my dad made me go visit them with him every Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday for at least an hour. And when you're 15, that sucks. I have practice. I wanted to go hang out with my friends. To me, it is one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. The fact that my dad took me there, that I could have that relationship. But one of the things I saw when I was there was just how many elderly people there never had a visitor. Ever.
Never.
And some of them, it was because they didn't have kids. And how scary it must be to be with complete strangers at the end of your time with no loved ones to celebrate. Now, listen, not everyone that doesn't have kids did so because of a choice they made. Some people, it's not. And there are things you could do. You could still, you know, get relationships with. Okay.
This is celebrating the not having kids. This is pushing young women not to have kids, right? This goes right back into that, feeds right back into that climate change stuff that they have. You know, less people are bad for the planet, so we got to, you know, have less people. That's why we encourage you to go into the abortion clinic and take care of your business there to end a life, because, you know, why would you want to bring them into this awful world that we're in? And we need to make sure we continue to keep the population down. And look how happy you would be, you know, living in your pod and not having any kids, eating your bug burgers, Rob, and watching the approved program from the state that you will intake as entertainment. Isn't that liberating, Rob? So liberating. You don't have to make any choices. You don't have to worry about anybody, and the government takes care of you and feeds you. What a liberating way of living.
Or let me put it this way, right? For the real conspiratorial feminists out there, you couldn't create a more pro-patriarchal system, at least for the men at the top that just want to have sex randomly, than the system that feminists have promulgated, right? Oh, just go out like a dude. Just hook up with multiple partners and make sure you never get pregnant, you know? Carefree. Like, the top 10% of men that are just like, great, I'll hook up with a different lady every night. And the sad part is, there are biological differences between men and women, and men, the way men are built biologically. And again, there are exceptions to every rule. Don't get me wrong, right? But most men are more capable of having a family when they're 40 than a woman. You have a biological clock, and I see it. I see women that start to hit their 30s that are like, oh man, I really want to have a guy now. Well, the problem is the types of guys that they want to settle with, they don't want someone with a past, that their 20s were hooking up with any guy and that they just had this free love type mindset. And so now you end up settling for something, and it's just, it's making people miserable. And the data doesn't lie. As people have embraced feminism more, and we've seen more women in the workplace, the numbers that they calculate on happiness for women have significantly declined. Now, that doesn't mean if you're watching right now and you're like, I'm a woman who's very happy with my career. I'm not saying that's wrong for you. I'm not, right? There are obvious exceptions, but the general theme of encouraging women not to be mothers, not to be wives, has been very bad for women. And the only people that it's really benefited are guys that want to engage in hookup culture that, because of the biological differences, could decide when they're 40 and they're making a bunch of money. Okay, I'll settle down now and have kids, no problem. You know, but women don't have that option, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, feminists have done such a great job that now men are women. So, I mean,
we're better. I was like, I had a debate on Tyree Nichols the other day, and the person I was debating was saying the black cops were racist. That's what was going on. And I was like, don't we live in a great society where the best women are men and the best anti-black racist are black people? It's like, wow, there's some groups are really jumping ahead of the curve here. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's just, I know we've gone, down this way and talking about, the cultural impact and of, this type of this mentality, thinking of, people like Chelsea Handler and people like that, and encouraging people not to start families and continue to live in that way of life that they want you to live in. And while missing out on like some of the best things, some of the best joys that you could ever receive by having a family and having that, your significant other, with you to go through the good and the bad times with. And I, my wife's watching right now. I see her in the chat, and some of the worst times we've gone through, or some of the most difficult times that we've gone through, we can look back now. We look back and we chuckle at some of that stuff. Some of the times we've been the most poor, and being able to look back and say, oh wow, I mean, I remember that when we had to do X, Y, and Z to get through to the next week and stuff like that, and how that just draws you closer as a couple, as a family unit. And even when your kids are a part of that, when you guys are working together as a family unit, they can look back and look at those instances and they create their memories through some of the stuff that we did, some of the craziness that your family goes through, and that will surface later in life for them as they're starting their family. Like, well, maybe we don't want to ruin our credit at such an early age, so that way we don't have to go through that terrible time that we had to go through as a family, even though we made it through as a family. Maybe I don't want that for my kids. I'm going to take care of my credit, or I'm going to make sure I have a savings, or I'm going to make sure some of these other things that we are going to do. But there's just something that's truly amazing about actually being able to have that family. And you're experiencing that. You have your wife and you have your young son, Hank, who's just what is it now? Almost 2, 3?
He's 2. He turned 2 on January 9th. So he's
yes.
His due date was January 6th. And it was so I have a video up. I debate all these lefties like, you probably were for the insurrection. I was like, dude, literally January 6th, I was like this because I thought we were going to the hospital at any moment. And I had to go get groceries. And I did a video in the car just as people started like fighting with the police. And I was like, look, I'm against any of this sort of violence, but I'm not going to listen to the left that celebrated violence for the past 9 months tell me this is wrong. I'll say it's wrong because I feel like saying it's wrong, but you don't get to lecture me. But I have that video on, of course it got taken off YouTube, but it's on Odyssey and Rumble. So anytime someone says, you probably didn't even condemn the violence, I was like, yeah, I did it like 2 minutes after it started. When did you? But yeah, there's nothing like, listen, it's one of those things like, Frank and me and a million people could sit here and tell you, like, have kids. Find someone, settle down, have kids, right? But when you do it, like, there's no explanation for that feeling. There just isn't. Like, from the moment at the hospital, from every moment thereforth, I am happier today than I've been at any point in my life. I wake up with a smile. I was always a pretty happy guy, but, like, I find myself at certain points of the day just stepping back, watching my son and watching my wife, just being like, I'm the luckiest person that ever lived. Like, it doesn't matter if I ever make another dime in my life. It doesn't matter if I get successful at my streaming or whatever. That is the greatest success that I'll ever have. And there's just no feeling like it. And if you would have talked to me when I was 25, I would have been like, I don't want kids. I like the idea of being able to do what I want. All of that is meaningless. I couldn't tell you the drunken party that I was at when I was 26 or when I traveled with a band. Like, all of those stories blur together. But my son, I can tell you what he did yesterday when he was pretending to make a phone call to his aunt. That'll stick with me for years, So all I could say is don't, make a decision, find someone that you really love and start a family. And it makes all the difference. It really does. And I think that you could see it, bringing it back to the Chelsea Handler thing, so many of these people, it's so hollow. They're so miserable inside. And, I wish them the best. I don't wish ill to Chelsea Handler. I don't. But you notice how much, someone said this in my chat. The irony is how much of that video was fake. If it was so awesome not having kids, then you wouldn't have to make up a time machine and shooting. I know she's joking, but It's like when you see the real videos that people do that, it's like having mimosas with my friend at 2 p.m. and they're all just sitting there like, You're like, oh, it looks like a blast. Looks like you guys are having a great time there, you know?
For sure. You know, some people, you know, some people have forgotten what's going on still in the background of all of this. You know, we've had a couple of people already announce that they're running for president, right? We had Nikki Haley that just came out recently, I think yesterday, to announce that she's running for president. Donald Trump, you know, obviously has announced that he's running for president so far. That has officially announced. And then we have Joe Biden. Oh, I don't know if he's officially announced yet. I think he said he is running for re-election or
in
whatever.
Fairness, he doesn't know either. So
yeah, very true. Jill hasn't told him yet.
Yeah.
So we still have this ongoing effort from the opposite party, right? Because the opposite party is in charge of these institutions, the DOJ and stuff like that, harassing Trump, right? Trying to still feed into that fantasy that they're going to lock Trump up, because that's what they promised they were going to do. I remember Kamala Harris campaigning on her being a prosecutor as she was going to bring Trump to justice. Remember those campaigns? I'm sure you do remember, Rob.
Yeah, it was, I mean, you remember the DA there in New York for the Southern District of New York? Was it Letitia James? Is that her name? I might be screwing names up, but she ran on the promise. This is a prosecutor who ran on the promise. I'll lock this guy up. Imagine if that went the other way. Can you imagine a conservative district judge saying, I'm going to run under the promise to lock up Joe Biden? As soon as he brought charges against Biden, they'd be like, well, this was corrupt. This was biased. But that's the brand for Democrats. They, again, accuse Trump of exactly what they're doing. If you read, there was this fantastic article. I forget the gentleman's name, but he was, I believe, a Pulitzer Prize winner. It was from the Columbia Journalism Review. And it was this, 30,000-word essay on the failures of the mainstream media in the Russiagate situation. And one of the things he talks about at the beginning, which even I forget to bring up all the time, in April of 2015, leading into the election, one of the things that were starting to get out in the journalist sphere about Hillary Clinton was her connections to Russia. And the fact that Ukrainian One deal went through, and Bill Clinton personally met with Vladimir Putin, and then 2 weeks later was given $500,000 to speak at a Russian state-owned bank. All these connections that the Podestas had to Russia and Hillary had to Russia. And so from that point, internal documents show that Hillary's camp was like, we need to accuse Trump of being close to Russia. That's what we need to do. All these years later, what's Jack Smith looking at Trump for? Well, let's see the possibilities. Possibly inciting violence. Oh, you mean like setting up a bail fund for people burning down police precincts? Oh, that was
Kamala Harris.
Or was it improperly handling of classified information? Oh, you mean like Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden? Or is it his shady financial connections to hostile foreign countries? Oh, you mean like Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, his dad? Is that what you're talking about?
And his brother?
Or is it quid pro quos like the first Ukrainian impeachment? Oh, you mean like the admitted quid pro quo that Biden and the Obama administration had? Every single one of these things. It's just they have the institutions, the FBI, the DOJ, all of those things, even when Trump was there, were part of not a Trump or Biden presidency, but this establishment that exists beyond the scope of any one presidency. Never forget, Chuck Schumer, the opposition leader, told you before Trump was sworn in that Trump was mistaken to attack the FBI because they would find 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at him. That is the most powerful elected leader in the world, has to be fearful of agencies underneath him because they will take him out. That's what he said, and that's exactly what's been going on. So I'm not surprised that Jack Smith and the D.C. grand jury, I'm actually a little surprised. Only 8 court battles? Why not 80? Right? What's Michael Avenatti up to? Maybe he's got some more people he could bring out of the woodwork and say that Trump did something. What? Any more P tapes in the ether out there that we need to discuss? It's a joke, right? They impeached Trump because he just said, I want Ukraine to cooperate with an investigation in the insane quid pro quo of firing a prosecutor that was looking at the now president's son. But Trump asked for that cooperation, and they said impeachment because you can't use our intel agencies to target your opposition. But you could launch 50 investigations into Donald Trump, kick him off Twitter. And I say this as someone who's heavily criticized Trump, right? So I'm not just like a Trump fanboy. Like, if Trump broke the law, throw him in jail. I don't care. What I care about is the obvious double standard and the fact that our institutions said, here's someone that might be outside the scope of us, so we're going to take him down by any means necessary.
Yeah, and of course, I think you probably are aware of this as well as I am. this is all an attempt in order to help slow down his campaign for presidency in 2024, right? To drown him in lawsuits, drown him in ongoing investigations, to continue to keep either him distracted or continue to pull money or funnel money out of his campaign or out of his war chest, that he has to handle all of these things, right? And on the sides. And of course, I don't believe that they're going to able to get a, well, let's just say that let's play devil's advocate for a second here, Rob. Let's just say Jack Smith, he's able to get these convictions or these grand juries to get Trump, and they bring him in to in this DC court, and they find him guilty from the jury that they handpicked out of DC, all Hillary Clinton donors, and they find him guilty. How does that play out to the American public, and what's the reaction by the American public at that point?
Well, this is what they'll be hoping happens. Some lunatic takes matters into his own hands, which probably would happen, and then that becomes the story, right? The story isn't, we have a two-tier justice system that just railroaded Donald Trump. The story is, look at what the evil Trump supporter did. Now, notice how that story is different than, like, say, when a leaker leaks a Supreme Court decision and then there's an assassination attempt on a Supreme Court justice. For some reason, that wasn't told of, this is because radical lefties like Chuck Schumer that said they would reap the whirlwind. Or it wasn't Maxine Waters and the insane things they were saying, or AOC, or the people. They don't get blamed for that. And so that's what they're constantly doing. And this is difficult to understand. See, there are certain group of people that are distrusting of the government like me that want to say everything's a false flag. Right? If there's a windstorm that knocks down your shed, it's because the government sent the HARP system to mess with the ionosphere that blew down your shed, right? Damn that government. Like, not always. Sometimes there's just a windstorm. Sometimes there's just a mass shooting. Sometimes there's a hurricane. Sometimes there's a train wreck. It's not always that the government intentionally caused it. But what they're experts on is exploiting situations.
Of course.
Right? And so when you have a country of hundreds of millions of people with so much going on, inevitably a disaster will strike. And so all you have to do is sit back, right? And what they constantly did with Trump and Trump supporters is they kept setting the dominoes up. And they're like, eventually someone's going to knock it down. January 6th was eventually going to happen. They set it up in every possible way. They continue to gaslight people over and over and over again that violence isn't that bad. It's mostly peaceful. You know, and it's the language of the unheard, and all of these people that you turned on your TV. And I was screaming to the heavens that entire summer, the summer of Floyd. I was like,
the summer of love.
Yeah. What happens, what the net result of this is going to be, what happens is inevitably the other side will say, we'll play that game too. If you could destroy stuff when you don't get your way, we'll do the same thing. And when it happens, they will bring down the boot like you've never seen. And that's exactly what happened. They're still locking up blue-haired grandmas. Years later, the task force continues unabated. We now find out that we had 80 FBI agents whose job was going through Twitter and making sure they didn't see any messages they found objectionable. The amount of task force that is dedicated to going after populist conservatives, and not just them, anyone who's critical of our establishment narrative. So there are people on the left that get caught into this, but few and far between, because most of them sold out. But the good ones that are there that get caught up in this, there is an incredible behemoth, the most powerful intel agency in the history of the world, that has its eyes on you. They don't have their eyes on the people attacking our infrastructure. They don't have their eyes on the border. They don't have their eyes on fentanyl. They don't have their eyes on China, right, that could fly surveillance balloons all across our country. It's on you. It's on the American people. And that's what, when you read these stories, like, well, Jack Smith's doing this, right? It's all designed to not just stop Trump and to hamper him and make him spend money, but they intentionally want to inflame passions to get someone to do something stupid. James Lindsay keeps talking about this, right? Don't give them trans Floyd, right? And unfortunately, this trans lady just got murdered. I don't know if they've determined that it was a hate crime or not. But nonetheless, they're just waiting. There's this great scene in this movie, Thank You for Smoking. It's a fantastic movie. And the premise of the movie is Aaron Eckhart is a lawyer for Big Tobacco, right? And he's on this like Jerry Springer-esque show at the beginning of the movie. And someone from this like alliance that's suing tobacco, lung health or whatever, is like, Big Tobacco wants you to die of lung cancer. And Aaron Eckhart's like, no, I don't. You do. We want you to live until you're 120 and smoke 4 packs of cigarettes a day. That's what we want. You want them to die, because then you could blame us and say, let's go. And that's exactly how these people are. They want the tragedy to happen. You can see it when someone gets killed in a mass shooting. They're giddy. Ooh, we could get guns.
Was he white? Was he white?
Right. and it's pathetic. It's so obvious what they're doing. And so, to answer your question, I do look for them to charge Trump. I really do, because it checks all the boxes they want. Right? The media will back them. They'll say, yeah, this was different than what Biden did. Yep. And then inevitably some lunatic will do something thinking that the lunatic will be right about how corrupt it is, but he'll be wrong that violence is the answer. But he'll be gaslit that he has no choice but to use violence, and then he'll do that, and then they'll crack down. You could mark it. You could clip this. That's an official prediction.
I'm sure he'll have some friends that follow him on the internet that will help him out with that. They're like, hey, I know some people that can help you with getting...
Do you know anything about, the chemical makeup of possible weapons that you could use? I have several friends that glow a little that you can talk to. Right.
We'll hook you up. We'll hook you up.
You know that chat group that you're in, or that Telegram? Not you specifically, Frank, but you out there listening, you're in some Telegram group or some Discord channel or something, and there's that one guy that's always like, you know what we should do? We should refresh the Tree of Liberty with the blood of tyrants. Yeah, that guy's a Fed agent, just so you know, right? They're going to throw your ass in jail forever, even if you don't do anything. So when you see those people, call them out, because violence legitimately isn't the answer. It's not. It's morally not the answer, and it's strategically not the answer. And the people that are out there pushing you for it are the people like the FBI agents in the Whitmer case, and probably the people like Ray Epps that we're probably going to find out was an FBI agent that's encouraging people to do this stuff so that it could have the dialectic backlash of big government stepping on your throat and saying, we can't allow free speech anymore because look what you people did.
Exactly, Rob.
A little rant there.
The rant's good. And just as we are wrapping up things here, we got a little bit of time left here. As we are speaking of the election coming up here, and of course we see these couple nominations, or not nominations, excuse me, couple people that have already come out to say, Trump and Nikki Haley, and of course, Biden and stuff. Do you see them on the Democrat side possibly running somebody out against Biden? Do you see somebody, maybe them pushing a Newsom over on their side?
Yes and no. I don't see them running someone against Biden. I think they will convince Biden to withdraw before Biden runs and they primary him. I don't think you'll see that. One of the things that the Democratic Party is amazing at is being cohesive.
Being team players.
Right.
Being team players.
Ask AOC, right? Big talker, big progressive anti-war talker, till she's in office, right? Then all of a sudden, I gotta, ask Bernie. Same thing. All of them. They all toe the party line. And so I think what'll happen is either they'll go with Biden again, which I think is less likely, or what's more likely is they're going to go to Biden and be like, listen, got an awful lot of classified documents sitting around your home. Be a shame if, all of a sudden we started to take more of an interest in that. Maybe it's time to gracefully spend some time with your family. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the approach. And don't get me wrong, this isn't 100%. They could very well stick it. It'll all be their calculation if they think there's still use in Biden or not. I think the use of Biden's worn thin. I think the folksy, oh shucks, Barack Obama sidekick that he was able to portray himself as he was hiding in a basement eating chocolate chip in the 2020 election. I think that started to wane as people could see through the veneer that he's actually an incompetent person that has significant health problems, that doesn't know what he's talking about in almost anything, and has to take orders from someone dressed up like the Easter Bunny when they're doing the egg roll, which I can't wait to see here in a couple months, right? It'll be great to see that again. The real leader of the country, the Easter Bunny, coming out and showing Biden what to do. But I would predict if it's not going to be Biden, that it'll be Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama. And I think that the sad reality is Michelle Obama would be very difficult to beat.
Yes.
It's unfortunate. And it'll be, the Biden presidency is just the Obama presidency 2.0, and a Michelle would be 3.0. So if you like what you see right now, keep that energy going for Michelle Obama. And I'll say this, underestimate her at your own expense, because one thing about her, just like her husband is, she is a gifted speaker, at least when reading off a teleprompter. If you go back and watch her speech at the 2015 DNC convention, it was a very compelling speech. It was written well, and she delivered it well. She is someone that can talk with charisma which is a godsend compared to Joe muttering Biden. Who's
Right.
yelling when he shouldn't be and muttering,
And whispering.
Yeah, it's very weird. But yeah, I don't see them straight up. Like, it would take a lot of chutzpah for Gavin Newsom to be like, oh, Biden's still in it, I'm gonna run. I think that the people that run the show in the Democratic Party, your Ron Klains and company, are gonna be like, no, we'll convince Biden to step down and then you could come in, or you're gonna wait your turn. But I don't see them not having. If Biden steps down, you might see a couple people jockey for position, but I don't see them primarying Biden. I think that it's more likely they ask him to step down. And I really do think that here's a conspiracy theory that I believe, right? I wonder, the one thing Biden did that I agreed with so far in his presidency was withdraw from Afghanistan. I think he did it poorly, but I wonder if it was exacerbated by the very sort of establishment general type people that lied us into Afghanistan for 20 years. If they were like, okay, this is one issue that Biden's, as a senile old man, this is something he's sticking to his guns. We can't convince him to stay. So maybe we'll just make it miserable. Maybe we'll make it so bad that the next time when people are like, we need to pull out of Syria, we'll say, well, remember what happened with Afghanistan. We can't do that. And I wonder if that wasn't a lesson to Biden, like, we made you, we could ruin you. And so you're going to toe the party line. And if that means we say it's time to go to the nursing home, then you're going to go to the nursing home. And I don't need to tell you this, there's certainly enough dirt on Joe Biden that if they really wanted to turn the screws and say, look, dude, we could really ruin you, I think that he would be smart to say, okay, I'll step down.
I have two more things before we get out of here. We got 10 minutes, so let's try to squeeze it in 5 minutes so we can say our goodbyes. All right. So real quick, it came to light that, of course, during the January 6th, that Gerald Milley, the chief of staff, went behind the president's back and told China, hey, don't worry, I got the president. I'm handling him. Don't worry, if there's anything, I'll prevent or give you a heads up if there's a preemptive attack, right? And then we learned just earlier this week that Milley basically told Biden that he was not going to be shooting down the balloon before it started crossing, because Biden's, according to reports, and this is why I told the audience when I talked about this last time, according to reports, that Biden wanted to shoot this down before it got further into the country. Gerald Milley convinced him not to shoot it down at all. Do you think that there's a bigger problem right now on the tops of the military brass that is ignoring direct orders from the commander-in-chief and willing to ignore direct orders?
Yeah,
I know that's a lot, but just a couple minutes.
I'll be quick with it, right? You saw this also with the withdrawal from Syria, where generals admitted that they lied to Trump about how many troops were in Syria. So when Trump said, let's bring our 2,000 troops home, there was really 4,000 there, and they're like, okay, we could still leave troops there. When it was clear what Trump was saying, bring all the troops home. The problem is, I'll say this as succinctly as possible. Go back and look at the impeachment of Trump, the first one, the Ukraine one. And all of these members of the State Department kept using this phrase, our foreign policy.
Yeah.
Trump was upsetting our foreign. Who is our? It's not the United States. It's not me and you. Our is they. It's the State Department and the generals, right? And they do exist. The presidents will come and go. Your Clintons, your Bushes, your Trumps, your Obamas, your Bidens will come and go. But that deep state remains. And they are out of control. And many times you get someone like Obama that goes along to get along with them, and he's right there with them. But other times when someone is against them, like Trump seemingly was, or slightly deviates, you could see they'll just say, well, we'll just do things the way we want. And we could release to people to make you look bad, or we could go behind your back. And I think that we ought to seriously investigate Milley as a potential, someone who committed treason, who's talking about our greatest foreign adversary and about how he sought to help them against a duly elected president.
Yeah, no, for sure. And real quick, what does President Trump have to do, or what does Donald Trump have to do to win re-election in 2024? What would Rob's advice to Donald Trump be in order to win in 2024? What would you say, Mr. President, this is what you got to do? This is coming from robnoerr. What does he have to do?
Ballot harvest.
Well, he's already said
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one. I think that what he needs to do is go back to what made him popular, which is talking about issues that other people aren't talking about that resonate with middle America. And so, two I could come up with is if he started to say that he would hold to account the people on the Epstein clientele list, and if he started to say he would hold to account the people that lied and covered up. There was this illness or something that happened a couple years ago, and then a bunch of people that locked down and stuff. You can't really talk about it on YouTube or even say the name of it, but I think those two things would resonate quite well. And he may have to have some honesty as well about his shortcomings. And he might have to, something against his character that I'd be shocked to see him do, sort of explain to the American people, I know there are a lot of you that don't like my personality-wise. And to be honest, there are some things that maybe are regrettable that I did. But the scope of what I faced, right? You're now seeing as you faced it, as you were told that you needed to sacrifice your children and your economic standing over and over again, while these elite people that have been there for decades lived high on the hog, and they got a large transfer of wealth from you and working families to them. And I think if Trump makes that case, and he has to play nice with whoever his opposition is after I don't mind them fighting during the primary, but let's say DeSantis, he's got to make an olive branch to DeSantis voters once that primary is done, if he wins that primary. And the same would be true of DeSantis. If he wins the primary, he's got to find a way to get the hardcore MAGA people to, and I hope that if both Trump and DeSantis are serious about getting this country in the right direction, they could fight tooth and nail for all I care in the primary. But I would hope that whichever one wins, they would say, I am full-throatedly backing the other 100%, and I'll do everything I can to help them. I hope that occurs. So.
Right. And that's important to do as if you want to win, because splitting third party would just ensure a Democrat presidency. And that would be disastrous to have to deal with this more for 4 more years. If the 2 years have already shown what it's been like, adding another 4 years or another 4 years, so that would be terrible. But Rob, that we've had a great conversation tonight, and I just want to highlight a couple of people in the chat real quick that were in here. Sleeper that came in with $20 at the beginning. Thank you, Sleeper, so much. Waffle Salter becoming a member of the channel. Thank you so much, Waffle Salter. And Ivan Adams coming in with the $2 super chat. I do appreciate you guys supporting. And, you guys are great. Wage War, Miss Mary, Tina, Princess Gigi, Yvonne Kennedy. I Like Salt, Viv B, Kyle Blank, over in the Philippines. He's representing all the way across in the Philippines right now watching. He was eating breakfast, something that our government wants us to stop doing here. Peter Fullwood, Peter, or Troll Lover here. He said this. He says, I live 43 miles southwest of East Palestine, and it's raining again. The raindrops are very sparkly and stinky, he says. So this is going to be an ongoing story. And if you guys want a little bit more insight on this, you can head over to Rob's channel right after we finish up here, because he has somebody on that will be talking at greater depth of what's happening in East Palestine. We got boots on the ground there, as you would say, and bringing that. So Rob, can you put your link in the chat there?
Yeah, let me, 1 second. I was ill prepared to actually put something in the chat. Figures. I was actually talking to River in my chat right now. So let me get it. It's just on YouTube. It's Normal America. You can find me there. But I will get the actual link.
Actually, I got it already.
You got it? See, you're faster.
I beat you to it.
I use
I got it.
Restream, and so but yeah, you can find me there. You can also find me on twitch.tv/robnoerr. And I'm not even gonna end the stream. I'll just keep going. So yeah, would love to have you from Frank's audience. I think that it's criminal that we don't do more shows together. We just went 2 hours. It felt like 10 minutes. It really did. I had a blast.
It truly did. I actually still had like a bunch of things to, you always over prepare for things because you never know how long a topic will actually last. And you always got way more articles than you might even get to. And I still have like 20 tabs open. So, but you're right, Rob. We should do this more often. Maybe we could talk later in the week. Maybe doing this once a month, because I absolutely love having you on and having you in. And typically we have a lot more people because we broadcast on their channel, but I'm trying to grow this channel as well. So it's great to see everybody that came out to support. I think we were up to like 50 some people tonight, which was great. And I would love to see all of you guys go over there. And thank you all who subscribed and hit that like button on the way in. Thank you so much. And of course, a big thank you to Rob for coming on. I texted him earlier this week. I said, Rob, I want you on, especially with the whole thing with going on there in Pennsylvania/Ohio. I thought you would be a great guest to have on and to talk a little bit more to that. And I thought about it. I was like, man, it's been a long time since I've had Rob on. I said, this will be a fun night. So, Rob, thank you once again. And I can't say enough good things about you. I truly can't.
Thank you. Always appreciate it and look forward to all of your channels growing. I know if left to your devices and not through manipulation of algorithms and stuff, you're going to be an incredible success. You're one of my favorite people to listen to, and I know that you'll grow by leaps and bounds. So now that Susan's out, just got to keep this Mohan character in line here. Huh?
Break him in. Yeah. See if we can do that. So, awesome show. Go check out Rob. He's still streaming. So if you head over his show right now, he's live, and he'll actually be covering that disaster a little bit more in depth over there. So Rob, thank you. We're going to get out of here for tonight. I do appreciate you, and I'll talk to you real soon.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right. See you later, Rob.
Yep. See you.
All right. Well, that was Rob Noerr. Again, check him out. Great.
Frank, great guy. All right, River, I see you there. Give me a second. First off, if anyone's in my chat that's a moderator, right, left of center is going to be my guest. You saw her in the chat there on the YouTube chat. If anyone could explain to her, I got to go to the restroom real quick, but if you're listening, River, what you want to do on the Discord channel is you'll see a section in the welcome section or the rules where you got to click the flag. There'll be like an American flag that you click that, and that'll give you access to the entire channel. And then if you just get on the audio waiting room, I'll bring you right on. I'm bringing up Discord. I have Discord on my phone, but I'm bringing it up on my computer. Apologies for running a couple minutes late. You deserve better than that, so I do apologize for that. But yeah, if you go to the welcome tab, or is it rules? So if you click rules, it says react with an American flag to these rules to gain access to the server. So if you just click that American flag there, that'll give you access to everything. And then go to waiting room under voice. Someone subbed or something. Let me see here. Aftershock. My goodness. I know that guy. I talked to him on the phone today. So I'll be right back, heading to the restroom. Aftershock will keep you all entertained. After giving a sub, I'll ask him to do more. Type something humorous in the chat, Aftershock. I'll be right there. See my new office chair? It's much comfier than the one I had before. The one I had before, the bolts were the wrong side in it, so the back would wobble like this. And I always thought there's going to be a day that you're all going to get to see me just duff it. Like that back of that chair is going to go out, and it'll be a mess. River, you around? Right, left to center? Just let me know. What else was I going to say? I had something. Yeah, Aftershock pissed away. 25 months following me. Thank you so much, Mary. Really appreciate it. How you doing? Sometimes it's nice just for someone to say hi. Isn't that nice? Oh, thank you, Cap Super Rates, for the donation of 500 bits. Thank you so much, Gizmo, for the donation of 100 bits. You guys are too generous. Trying to get that money for... Yeah, right, left of center. If you click under the rules tab, there's an American flag. And if you click that American flag at the bottom of that message, that should give you access. If not, if you just give me your, I'll put my Discord link for my personal. How do I do that? Where's that? User settings. Oh, wait. We could just do a direct call. That's fine too. Here. Just follow me on Discord at that number. Thank you, Cabins. I really appreciate it. And we don't have to do it through my channel. We could just do a direct call. That's fine by me too. And if that doesn't work, we could use whereby. Let's leave this. I don't know if I have you as a friend. Yeah, I got you, River. Does that pop up? I just waved to you on Discord there, River. So there's Frank. Man, Frank is, I don't know why I don't, not only is Frank awesome, but I love doing shows like that. I mean, let's be honest, Frank does 90% of the work. He comes up with all the ideas. So it's, I just come and flap my gums. That's always good. Frank is the perfect sort of interaction because we both have, Frank just naturally has that host type feel to him. It's almost like when you watch a good sports announcing team and you got the play-by-play guy and the color guy. Like Frank's the play-by-play guy and I'm the color guy. He does great. I mean, it just, oh, I'm a boomer too. Don't ever apologize for that. Okay. Now I'm going to call you. Do you want to do video or audio? I'll do video. And if you don't have video, that's fine. But y'all are going to lose me for a second here. There we go. Maybe. Get the, oh. There we go. What's happening? We got it working out. We're both boomers, so it's like we could do a whole show of just us struggling with technologically deficient.
Yeah, now I got to turn you off.
Just let me know, audience, if you all could hear me. Is my mic a little low? Check. I bet it is. 1 second. Here we go. The boomers are at it again. We built this country. Don't yell. What are we, the third greatest generation? Something like that?
What happens about? Oh, okay, so can you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. Yeah, sorry, I'm messing around changing things on the screens. And yeah, sorry about that. That's so embarrassing. I'm not good with technology.
No, please. First off, I was late even getting here. Secondly, like, do you know how many times I've been streaming for 3 years? I can't tell you how many times I started my stream and I'll just be going off for like 5 minutes and I look over at the chat and people are like, dude, your mic's not on. You're just yelling at the wind. It happens all the time to me. I'm not can hear. All right, everyone's saying they could hear both of us. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's the show. Two boomers successfully set up their audio. We did it. Thank you so much. So I want to welcome my guest this evening who reached out to me. It's been too long since I've talked to you as well. I knew you as right, left of center originally when you came on the show, but my friend River wears a ton of hats. I've seen do hilarious puppet shows, was a former professional wrestler, is a frequent guest on one of my favorite people, Aircraft Sparky show. And I believe you're helping him with sort of his variety show that he's doing on Thursday nights is right. So yeah, my friend River, thank you so much for being here this evening.
Well, thank you for having me back on. Yeah, it's been a while since we spoke. I hope we can do it more often in the future. I think you are super duper talented. and I can't wait to see you explode. So, well, that doesn't sound right.
Just like the train that we'll be talking about. I'm 70 miles. You're likely to explode before me, being close to East. Now, I do appreciate it. I really do. You know, it's one of those things that I love debate, and so I'm drawn to talking to people that I disagree with more than people I agree with. But like just getting done, I was just talking to Let's Be Frank on his show, and then talking to you, I'm like, man, I forget how much I miss just talking to like-minded people because, you know, I don't know how it is for you, but for me, in my day-to-day life, I know great people, but very rarely am I talking about anything political to them. And so you feel like you're in this space where it's like, is the whole world nuts? Is there no one out there that kind of has a similar belief to me? And then you realize like, oh, there are tons of people. It's just I'm never talking to them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of, I guess, the fun things about doing Sparky shows. I mean, sometimes we disagree, but it's usually not like big disagreements. And because, you know, we're all, I guess, conservatives, like we can kind of disagree without freaking out, melting down, tears, screaming, curse words.
That's exactly like like dealing with Sparky or dealing with you or dealing with Frank. Like, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but it's like I feel like it's all people that live in the real world. And sometimes when I deal with these left-wing people, it's like you've never had a job. And I'm not saying that necessarily as a pejorative, but oftentimes you hear them pontificating on things where it's like, but you don't really know what it's like to have a family, you know, to try to take care of a kid and try to work 2 jobs and, you know, things like that. And I think oftentimes it comes with this very naive perspective where it's like, well, someone's always taking care of me, so I assume they will. And it's like, study a little bit of history. World history is rife with people that thought their government was going to take care of them. And unfortunately, when it mattered most, I think as we're seeing in East Palestine there that we're going to talk about, oftentimes when you need it most, that's when it falls through.
Right. Yeah. It is. It's just an embarrassment right now and a tragedy. Like it's really a disgrace. It's an utter disgrace what's going on down here. So I want to give the exact mileage, but let's just say like I could walk to it. I wouldn't be happy about walking to the site, but it's a doable walk. And I'm still like in the zone where animals are dying. Fortunately for me, I didn't smell any fumes. So I'm hoping okay. Like my chickens are all alive, but I know that other people, you know, there's been dead chickens, dead foxes. It's scary, and I'm not, you know, getting any kind of help or relief, maybe because they're focusing on, you know, everyone in the 1 to 2 mile radius, but right. and they're even, I think they're expanding that, they're getting ready to expand that out to like all of East Palestine, but it's not like that toxic, you know, plume cloud respects borders like that. Right. It's like, hey guys, you know, you've got to look at the surrounding areas. Like, this is not okay. We're not okay. If you look at, even if you wanted to do something like private testing for your water, your soil, your air, I saw someone interviewing, I think it was on Fox today, and she was saying that she got estimates and they were like $15,000 to $50,000. So it's like, that's not an option.
Yeah.
So I feel like right now I'm kind of having to come up with my own protocol for things.
Right. Now, let me ask you, are you on the Ohio side of the border or the Pennsylvania? You're on Ohio, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I'm 70 miles away, north of Pittsburgh here, but that's nowhere near as close. Like you said, you're within walking distance. Have you seen in your town, anyone from the EPA, anyone from the rail company? Have they been like at any town meetings? Have they talked to anyone that you're aware of, like door to door or anything like that?
Okay. Well, I did not go to the town hall because I was just concerned about breathing the air, like getting closer than I already am, even though I wanted to go. I have tons of questions. But I got scared. But then today I decided that I was going to go down there and just screw it, report. I'll bring my respirator with me. And lo and behold, the person that I saw down there and did an interview with actually today was JD Vance.
No kidding. One of our best, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, JD Vance is down there, boots on the ground. Harris wasn't there, Buttigieg wasn't there, Biden wasn't there. Trump endorsed Senator for Ohio, JD Vance is there down at the scene, and he had his hands in the water. I'm like, don't put your hands in the water.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you mentioned sort of the price. That's something I think a lot of people aren't thinking about. Like, because there's this advice that's given that's good. That's like, you should go out and get all of your stuff tested and get yourself tested because you want a baseline that if, God forbid, something happened in the future that you would be able to say this was caused after this incident. But like you said, sometimes the costs are prohibitive. Can you just give us a sense, like, is this a wealthy area? Like, what's life like in general in that town and where you live? Do people have disposable income in general that they would be able to shell out $2,000 for that sort of testing?
My area, it's kind of weird. It's more rural, but there are no, like, there's no zoning. So you can have, like a $500,000 house kind of next to a trailer.
Right.
So it's kind of a mix, but actually East Palestine itself, I'd say, is definitely like more on the poor end.
Yeah, I think I was reading like the average family income was like $40,000, and that's no joke when you're talking $1,500 for testing. That's like not being able to pay your mortgage or your rent that month. That's a significant amount of money. It's very, I think that for me, one of the things, I tend to lean more in a libertarian vibe. And so I have problems with government doing all these agencies and regulations that I see as incompetent or corrupt. But we do rely on them. Like the bargain we do is, regardless if I like it or not, I pay taxes into it. And it got to be incredibly frustrating for people in that area that probably didn't vote for this particular administration in good numbers because it's sort of a red area, to actually need the help of a government that they didn't trust and to have it fall flat on their face. Do you hear people like kind of voicing that, like what is this all about? Like we thought that at least if a tragedy like this happened, they could put politics aside and be here.
I don't know. I think people have low expectations, and those expectations were met and exceeded. It's sad, but I mean, yeah, there's a lot of frustration about, Ukraine, and, we can send money there, but we can't help the poor people in Ohio. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the rub, right? It's always, I would guess my area of the world is very similar to East Palestine. I live in rural Pennsylvania. And most people just want to be left alone. Most people are like, 6 years ago, and I'd be at the bar and like the Steelers would be on TV and I'd be like, it's damn government. They'd be like, shut up. No one wants to hear it, Rob. Shut your mouth. Yeah. It's one of the reasons I started doing a channel, because it's like no one wants to hear it. But I think with like the pandemic and stuff, people started to wake up, where it was like, I know people that lost their jobs, lost their homes, whose parents passed away in nursing homes. They couldn't go visit them. And they could buy the bill of goods, most people, that you have to sacrifice somewhat. But if you're in this situation like East Palestine, after all of that, and this tragedy happens, and it's like basically the big-hearted people that were willing to put pins on for Ukraine and send all this money, where are they? And now you feel like it's like, oh, shucks, you're on your own, good luck. And it's got to be disheartening, I would guess, in your community to see people that are just like you said, low expectations, but those haven't even been met. I can imagine the frustration about Ukraine.
Yeah, well, I mean, the frustration of, what was really frustrating for me was I have a very close friend, and we're on opposite sides of the political spectrum. But when I was telling her what was going on, first of all, she hadn't heard the story. And then she was looking it up as we were talking about it. And, I told her how close I was, and she was like, oh no, that's horrible. But the moment I started complaining about, where's FEMA and FEMA response and all that, she took it like a personal insult against herself. And she's like, oh no, this should be, you need to contact your local people and this should be handled locally. And I'm like, these are small, poor, rural areas. They don't have the resources, because she's in the big city. This isn't something that's happening in a major city. Like, what is FEMA for if not for this?
Right, and here's what's different about this situation. Now, I'll admit to being ignorant. Maybe you've heard something that I haven't. My guess is before Norfolk decided to blow up, the toxic waste that was there, I would guess there had to be some conversation with the EPA, right? So at that point, if that action for people that don't understand, and you can step in anytime if I get this wrong, there was this train accident, and then for several days, the toxic waste was basically laying there burning, and they decided that for whatever reason it would be too difficult or too expensive to clean up, that they would explode it, which is where you see that mushroom cloud and all those toxic chemicals that went into the air. My assumption is, and I could be proven wrong, but there had to be some sort of contact with the EPA before the company of Norfolk just went out of their way to do that. And so it falls flat then if that is part of the disaster to be like, well, the local government could take away. Because let's say the local government was like, well, we thought that was a bad idea, and we're not equipped to handle the fallout of you dispersed all of this in the air. What can we, a small government of East Palestine, do? Has you heard anyone in your community get an explanation from the EPA, from Norfolk, or anyone why they needed to take the step of blowing this up? Has anyone spelled it out? This is exactly why we did this?
Well, it's my understanding that the reason why they did that is because the vinyl chloride boils at 8 degrees and it was already on fire, and they were concerned that the train cars essentially would turn into bombs. So if they didn't let it on fire, it was like shrapnel would be sent everywhere. But my question for them would be, like, if you had to drain it, instead of draining it into a ditch, why didn't you just drain it into large drums?
Right.
And take it somewhere else. Why did you do that part? You have to let it out into, they have tons of huge containers. I mean, we have them all over the place, in the rural areas, the big gigantic, I don't know how, 100-gallon
water drums.
Water drum. Yeah, they're all over the place. Same thing with barrels. If you're living in a rural area, there's plenty of those around.
Yeah, I totally agree. Did they with the sort of the fact that this was something with Norfolk? One of the things that I heard, and maybe you could clear this up, was that there's a lot in the local government, maybe the fire department and stuff, that Norfolk has put money into a lot of those local government agencies, and maybe that's why that this was. Is that true? Is that an integral part of the economy or the public infrastructure of East Palestine?
No, I don't know, but it would make a lot of other things make sense. So there were two, kind of bad or the potential to be really bad derailments in November of 2022, all within about an hour of this area here. The first one that happened at the very beginning of November, where they dumped a bunch of trash into the Ohio River. So this is the second time they're polluting the Ohio River, but it wasn't a big story. I think that was in Steubenville. Yeah, so very, very close. And the next one was in Ravenna, and we almost had that was also in November, but we almost had another East Palestine because thank goodness. Well, this is a small area, so when stuff like this happens, people talk, and there are no secrets here. So I was able to talk with somebody who's in emergency services, but they let us know that this train did have hazardous materials on board, and that was Ravenna Township. But when you see how it's reported on the news, they say, oh, well, the train carried rock salt and other materials. And then they said, well, no. Then it says, no hazardous materials were involved. Or no, we're released is what they said. But if you would have, said that the correct way, hey, there was a train that derailed and it was full of hazardous chemicals, and we almost had a really bad situation here. That's more of how it should have been reported, but they're not reporting things like this.
Yeah, that's incredible. Now, you don't have to tell me exactly, but if you had to guess, I know you said walking distance. How many miles would you say you are from the site of the crash?
I didn't want to pinpoint myself too terribly.
Would you say it's under 20?
I've already kind of doxed.
Yeah.
But I've kind of already doxed myself, but yeah.
Okay, so
Definitely.
given that, did you get any sort of notice, an evacuation notice, a warning to boil water? Where you're at, did you get any sort of notice like within the past week or so like that?
Ugh, that's another one. You're gonna be all fuming over this one. So we found out about the initial crash first night, but that was just randomly scrolling through the news. We didn't find out anything else until a few days, like once it became like the huge international story. Like, we should have been told to evacuate. We are close enough. I believe if anybody had a lick of common sense, they would have told us to leave. And no phone alerts, nothing. They said nothing, no stay inside, nothing.
That's incredible. That's unbelievable to me. I mean, I guess it's believable given the state of our government, but to me, and I'll see what you think about this. Now, like, a lot of what you're saying is just like factual stuff, but I'll ask your opinion as well.
Okay.
For me, I think there is a lot of criticism into how could an accident like this occur. That's one level of it, but I think there's a separate level of culpability for the reaction once the accident happens, right? And that's where I really think the Biden administration and, the DeWine administration and the Shapiro administration here in Pennsylvania are to blame, because the lack of transparency with people like you that are even that close, or even the people that were even closer, the lack of transparency with exactly what was going on and how people, even if government resources weren't available, how people themselves could take necessary precautions. That, to me, is what aggravates me the most. And I was wondering, like, do you feel that way too? It's not so much, I blame Biden personally for the train derailing. It's, where was the government in giving people the best possible advice? It took them 11 days?
Yes, I'm more upset about the response to the accident than I am about the accident. Because at this point, we can't 100% say why it happened. We don't know, was it a complete and total accident? Did somebody sabotage the tracks? Like, right. We don't know. Well, I guess what we see now is that there was a train car that was on fire for like 20 miles before it even got it. But we still, it's hard for me to, it's the brakes, or, it's I'm going to wait and find that out.
I agree.
But in the meantime, I can be furious about not being told to evacuate, or not being warned, not even just stay inside, not even that.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Like I have neighbors in the dead animal zone still here.
That's incredible. I mean, these are the same people that basically were telling you that maybe you shouldn't be allowed out in public without a mask because of an illness. And then, so regardless of what you think about that messaging and whether or not it works or not, the implication is, well, the people that are saying this are very concerned about your health. And they're not, right? As soon as there could be potential, like, it's a difficult decision to be made, or there could be potential blowback, it seems like the go-to is just like, well, we'll just ignore it and hope the media doesn't report on it, and then it'll all go away. Next week, there'll be a new balloon flying over America, and people will forget all about this story. That seems incredible. And I was wondering what you thought of this. I think that the only reason that I know of this story, you would have probably heard about it, obviously, but the only reason I know of this story is because of social media. Like, if we weren't able to have conversations like this, or people weren't able to post on Facebook or Twitter, I don't think the mainstream media ever gets around to covering this. Do you feel the same way?
Yes. And the only reason why I would have heard was because of the proximity. But oh my gosh, I'm still thinking about, they did that controlled burn, and like, I wasn't notified.
Yeah, it's
that is.
It's got to be horrifying too, because I mean, we're literally. I remember not even a year ago there was a big news story. You remember Jon Stewart? Right, was advocating, it's terrible as he is, he was, arguing and advocating for the sort of burn pit justice for, the military personnel that had lung problems because of these burn pits. Like, you had the 9/11 responders, you had Camp Lejeune, all of these instances when the government kind of gave the green light on things, and then decades later you find out, like, oh no, like, people suffered mightily because of that. And, I think that the fact that, like, it's got to infuriate you knowing not only were you not warned, but it's not like the government's got a good track record on these sorts of things.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I could have brought my chickens inside. I could have put I have a giant dog crate. I could have put the chickens in the crate I could have done something. Thank God we don't have bees anymore. I'm sure they would have killed them all, but we had hives. But even there, then you can wrap the hives or kind of cover them a bit whenever they're like spraying for, pesticides. Sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent, but if you belong to the Beekeepers Association, you get the Beekeepers Association gives you better warnings, for spraying pesticide to let you know to put your bees away than these people do when they decide to just blow up a train full of toxic chemicals and release everything into the air, and then you're dealing with people's hells. Like, there's more care for the bees than for the humans.
And I think it's funny that, look, I'm not going to claim that my side doesn't do this at times, right? But when something happens, everyone wants to be able to point the finger at the people they want, right? And it might seem like I'm doing that, but the people in charge are the executives in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and the government, or the federal government. That's DeWine, Shapiro, Biden, and their response has been absolute garbage. And Norfolk, as far as I'm concerned, the company itself. But given that, I think that, like, the people that want to point to this and say, see, this means we need bigger government, we need more regulation. One of the things I think, and we'll see what you think about this, is it's amazing how they want to micromanage every aspect of your life. What type of stove you could have, who you're allowed to associate with, what type of medication you have to take. They can't even get something right as tell people to evacuate when they're going to do a controlled burn of chemicals. Like, how does that establish faith from the people that are out there saying, like, well, this proves that we need bigger government and bigger They can't even get these little things right. So where's the confidence that if we gave them the keys to everything, then it would be okay?
Well, yeah, there is none. I mean, I think I'm going to paraphrase Ben Shapiro, but, it's like the government sucks at everything, I think, except for killing people. So
yeah, they're good. Well, they're good at that.
And I'll have to add on, and laundering money. They're good at that too.
Right. And covering up Epstein case. They did well there. But yeah, I think it's fascinating. I hope that you'll keep us informed through Sparky's channel, or maybe we could talk again just to see what happens, because I do think it's one thing that there are some people talking about it, but it's another thing to be able to talk to someone who literally could see what's going on, because we're in the dark. Like, who do you trust on this? Some random Twitter person that's like, trust me, I'm here. So, I mean, I trust you. I know that you're in the area. So it's interesting, and it's got to be a scary time. I really do feel for you and the people there.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, and if you thought I was lying, I did interview JD Vance, so I got him. If you saw he uploaded a video today showing the rainbow water. He put that on his Twitter, and I caught him like right after he finished filming that for Twitter. So that's
awesome. Is it on your channel?
Yes.
Right, left of center on YouTube, right?
Yes, I have it in a shorter version, and then I have like an extended version.
That's awesome. We'll check it out for sure. I don't want to leave you go before I do this, right? Like, we have to talk trash on Sparky a little. Right? Like,
no.
Yeah, so here, first off, Sparky's on Let's Be Frank show in the chat while I'm on there, and he's mocking British people's teeth. So when you do the show with him next Thursday, make sure that he shows his entire stream. I expect to see pearly whites that are immaculate if he's going to be picking on an entire nation's dental records. I can't recall. Okay. It's not something that I notice about. I mean, I think his teeth are fine. I've never noticed them being terrible, but now I'm really interested the next time I see him.
I do, just because I'm on his show doesn't mean I always agree with everything he says.
Oh, yeah.
Or does, or the jokes he makes. But
I love listening to you guys. That's what I love about you all's show is that show, as far as I'm concerned, is the closest fast meal I get to me and my friends sitting around watching the ball game while we're just talking about stuff. Like, there's not airs like, well, this person's the host and this person's the guest, or we're doing an official debate. It's literally just like regular people talking. And it's not all politics. Sometimes it's joking around and stuff. And I think that's what you guys get really right. I talked to Sparky on the phone one day about this. You'll drive yourself insane if all you do is sit around and talk about politics and culture. It's nice to just be able to talk to some like-minded people, even if you're not agreeing with everything, just to have a good time. And I think anyone who watches that show for 10 minutes will at least say this. They're all having a good time. Like, there's no doubt.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I just realized I think we've been doing it for like 4 months now, so I feel like we're getting a little more comfortable with the chemistry and stuff. I'm getting better at speaking up because I would just, I would never interrupt.
He's a big mouth, Sparky. I'm calling him out. First off, I'm sure you heard about this. We did this weight loss competition. I lost 10 pounds in 3 months and thought it was amazing. Sparky lost something like 700 pounds or something, he said. Like, he looked great. He killed it, man. I was like, and he'd be texting me every night like, man, I did, like, here's what my list was at the gym today. I was like, I just got back from Dairy Queen. Like, I didn't hit the gym so much today, Sparky, but I thought that was a lot of fun, but ever since then, I'm like, I have an understated rivalry with Sparky where I'm just going to take him. I'm hoping to film a segment for next week's variety show. I probably won't be able to be live, but I think it'd be cool. He said it'd be cool if I film a segment, and then you can make fun of how bad it is. I'm going to do Rob's Royal Decree. If I was king of the world, I'll even spoil it. My first episode's going to be, I would put that extra R in the word sherbet, because I always call it sherbet, and everyone goes, it's not sherbet, it's sherbet. And it's like, yeah, kiss my ass, not anymore. Now it's sherbet, and it will be punishable by a year in jail to correct someone on that anymore. That'll be my segment.
Yeah, I think we're looking at doing that. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go.
I think we're looking at doing that show every other Thursday.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe once a month, but probably every other Thursday because it's a lot that goes into trying to do that, finding musical guests and
crazy. That's a crazy amount of work. It's so like the easiest type of show is just to talk about politics because our politics is so stupid. There's something to say about it every day. But actually trying to be like a non-political entertaining show, that's tough. That's tough work. I really commend you guys. I think that there's a lot of production that goes into a show like that. Me, it's just like I hit stream and here I am. It's like, what we talk about today? I could literally just like read Biden quotes for 4 hours and there's a show, just Biden stumbling over his words. One of the people in my chat wanted me to ask you, when you were a wrestler, what was your finishing move?
Oh, goodness.
Did you have a dedicated one or?
Not really. I mean, for me, like more the way it worked is I wasn't really attached to like one particular name, so I would be different names on at different promotions, and I would basically just do what they told me.
Okay. Did you like it?
Yes and no. That's a mixed bag of nuts. That's I loved the adrenaline rush that you get when you're out in front of a crowd. I like jaw jacking back and forth with the audience. I'm an entertainer. I like to perform. But I mean, it's basically it's all the other stuff. It's the casting couch aspect of it all. Yeah. It's, guys, thinking that they can paw on you. Like it's bad. It's still, yeah.
It's funny.
It's like it hasn't been Me Too'd yet, but it needs to be.
Yeah.
And it's also deeply racist too. Like it's bad.
Yeah, I see. It's so weird because like, as a fan, I haven't watched wrestling for years, but I was a fan in the 90s. I'm 38, so like when I was coming up, it was like The Rock and Steve Austin. And I remember being younger with like The Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan and stuff. And there's definitely this like, watching it then, there was this sort of like stars in your eyes, like, wow, how cool is this? And then you watch these like shows like on Vice, like Dark Side of the Ring. And it's like, I have a friend that's really into the history of wrestling. And he's like, yeah, it's basically just all the worst people ever all in one place. Like that's basically the history of wrestling. A bunch of crazy carnival people, that are just the most abusive, like some of the fan favorites, like Jimmy Snuka, like he murdered a woman. It's like for 30 years, everyone knew it, but there he was on your television, like, hey, So I could see that, especially as bad as the stories at the big level are. It's going to be way worse at the local level because there's no spotlight on it. So more can get away. So that's a bummer that you had that experience because I think I agree with you. I think the idea of, physical acting like that's got to be intoxicating, just like to perform for an audience like that. So it's a shame that you had to see that aspect of it. But you still, do you feel that you get that feeling through other things, like through other like acting and stuff that you've done or entertaining that you've done?
What's the next closest thing? Well, I'm also a fire performer, like a fire performance artist.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I kind of try to call myself Joel of all trades. Like I want to do like everything, experience everything, but I do like a fire hula hoop, fire poi, fire batons, fire fingers, fire staff, like everything, but like, well, not everything, but a lot of things, but just not, I don't eat fire because that's dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you, here we go. Here's a hobby I tried to get into. You could master it. Sometime on Sparky's show, try to whittle something. I bought the knife, I bought the wood, I bought the book, but I never did anything. You don't think you'd make a good whittler?
No, I've tried that. I can't think in 3 dimensions and carve things like that. Like art, like I can't draw. I'm not that kind of artist.
Right. Okay. Well, there you go. That was a potential. But no, I think that's so cool. I got into debate because I loved competition. So when I went to college, I went to a little school, Clarion University, and I was like, I'll play football. I was an okay high school football player at a small high school. And I sat at a desk next to, it was before practices started, next to a guy whose name was Reggie Wells. Reggie Wells was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals as a offensive lineman, just a monster of a man. Like this big dude was good enough to be in the NFL. And I remember just looking at him like, I don't think I'm going to play football. I don't think it's going to work out for me. So I did the next best thing. I debated. That was competition. That's how I got into it, though. It was literally like, I wanted to compete at something. And I just imagine if I was, 20 now instead of like when I was, I'd probably be like, I'll get into competition, a competitive video game league. That's what I'll do. But that wasn't really a thing back then. So I did debate. And now here I am moderating debate shows and debating left-wingers that live in their parents' basement, An exciting career of competition. But
how would one go about getting into debate?
Well, for
Asking
me,
for a friend.
Yeah, well, for me, I got in it. So the collegiate way of it, or the high school way, was you just find a school with a team. So Clarion University, I took a course. I was going to be a journalist. I was a communication major, and my second semester, I took this debate course, and it wasn't debate like I did the game, like competing against other schools. It was just learning like just the techniques of debate and stuff like that, structure of argument. And the final of that course, you could either write a paper or you could travel with the Clarion debate team and go to a debate tournament. And I did that. And the divisions in debate in the style I did, there was novice, which was basically entry level, then JV, which was once you had so much experience, you had to bump up, and then open or varsity, which was the top level. Well, this tournament, because it was halfway through the year, it had a special division called rookie. And that was for people that never did debate. So the novices had already been debating half a year. So I entered the rookie tournament and I won. And then I was like, I'm just going to join the debate team. I'm going to be the greatest debater ever. I'm just going to crush people, And then I went to my first novice tournament and I walked into round 1 and I'm with this partner, this girl who this was the only tournament she went to. And it basically was something like, let's see if I can remember the topic. Like, observation 1, nuclear proliferation. We should sign the comprehensive potential treaty to make sure that we're not having nuclear proliferation. This is from Johnson in 2003. If we sign the comprehensive potential treaty, this means the political course would lower the nuclear arsenal, which means the United States would also lower their arsenal, would lower the chance of nuclear proliferation, accidental war, and things like that. And next, nuclear proliferation causes nuclear war. This is Smith. Like, that's how they were talking. And I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck is this? What is this? And my partner started crying. Right? And she's just like, what? And then we lost that round. And then round 2, we're just like, what the hell is going on? Round 2, we debated a team like us and won. And so we walk into round 3 and my partner's still crying. And she looks at this team we're debating round 3 and she says, we debated this team. You couldn't even understand what you're saying. Like, it was crazy. They were just like, it was so fast. And the team we're debating is like, yeah, we just beat that team last round. And then they stood up and it was the same shit. And I'll never forget, that was the 3rd regular debate round I ever had. And the team was from Liberty University. And the girl looked at me and said, you weren't the worst person I ever debated. And that was it. I was hooked for life. I was like, motherfucker. There is no way you're going to talk to me that way, right? I was so mad, and it took me 3 years, but I beat that girl, and I said to her after the round, "You weren't the worst person I ever debated." I held that grudge for 3 years. I did, but that was it. That's how I got into it. I was hooked. I was like, "What is this? Why are people speaking?" And to me, I was attracted to the idea that it didn't matter how you looked. It didn't matter what school you went to. I was debating Harvard. I was debating the Naval Academy. All that mattered was your argument. Well, it turns out that's not true, but that's what sold me on it. It turns out going to Harvard means you'll win more because the judges are more likely to vote for Harvard than Clarion, and how you look matters. If you're dressed like a bum like I was, you're less likely to win, and if you're more attractive, you're more likely, so there's shady stuff to talk about, but that was how I got into it. I never debated in high school. When I made it to the national debate tournament, I was probably the only person at that tournament that never debated in high school. My partner debated 4 years in high school. Most of them went to private schools and then got scholarships for debate. I just walked on. It was just some drunk that was used to arguing with people at the bar and just went from there. learned to talk fast. That was about it. But now, if your friend wants to get into that style of debate, you have to go through a school. There's no one really offering debate tournaments where you could walk on as a non-student. But
I was my friend. I was just joking. It wasn't really a friend. It was me.
Oh, okay. Well, that's how you would get it. If you want to get into the online debate sphere, that's totally different. You just say the word, I'll get you lined up in a debate. You could come on my panel. The most important thing with online debates is just to be yourself, right? Where people go wrong so much is being a character, right? Or they're trying to shoot past their skis. They're trying to talk about something that they just don't know about. And then you could get exposed. I watched this guy on Andrew Wilson's channel the other day on the Crucible. His name was Garland Farms. And he was debating these two vegans, and he was basically the debate was how a vegan menu is actually worse for animals and the environment than a meat diet. And if I could, I'll try to do my best impression of Garland Farms. Like, this is opening statement. The opposition will always make the same types of arguments. But farming is a very serious issue. And so you start listening, you're like, oh, this is going to be rough. He doesn't talk like a debater. He doesn't have this charisma or, kind of an engaging personality. By the end of that debate, I was a fan. He just had such a passion, even though his voice didn't exude passion. You could see the passion in him for his livelihood of farming. And he was eminently prepared to talk on the topic. And what I tell people all the time is they'll be like, well, you're a really good debater. I couldn't beat you at a debate. And I'm like, bullshit. You just have to find the right topic, right? My wife debate me on, what type of engine is the best in the car, she would crush me. I don't know shit about it. I could try, but I will be exposed by anyone that knows what they're really talking about. And so my recommendation is people that are like, well, I'd like to try the online debate thing. Find a topic that you really know and want to talk about. And don't worry about winning the debate. Just be like, I'm going to go and I'm confident on this issue and I'm going to talk about this issue. And there's a 95% chance if you just be yourself, you're going to come out looking really good. I think it's particularly on the left, I see it, where these people, they'll be like, I'm a foreign policy expert. It's like, really? What's your expertise in foreign policy? You took a 101 level course at your local community college? I don't call myself an expert on it. The only thing I'm an expert on is late night snacking. That I would, I put my foot down on expertise. But yeah, if you want to do a debate, I could set you up in a one-on-one debate, or if you want to come on my panel show, you don't even have to say, you could just chime in when you feel. I think you'd be good at it. I really do.
If it's a panel show, does that mean I have to have a opening statement? Does everyone have an opening statement? Everyone has a closing I don't even know what the pieces are exactly.
So my panel show, it'll be the first one I'm doing. It's called The Arena. There's one topic that's disclosed. If the debate's not going anywhere, I'll change the topic, but it'll be fine. The topic this week is, who's more evil, the left or right? Opening statement's only a minute. Your opening statement could literally be this, I think both sides have shitty people, so I'm not going to side either side's the most evil, but I'm interested to hear what people have to say. Or you might say, if you think it's the left, you might be like, look, the left has literally called for the dehumanization of straight people, white people, Christians. They're trying to separate us based on ideology. They're incompetent. They're in charge of every institution now. And it seems like they don't care about anyone, not even their constituents that identifies there. That's an opening statement. So the opening statement's not that big of a deal. This topic was set specifically kind of for the panel that I have. But many topics might be things like, do you think that we should limit people from purchasing an AR-15? That might be a topic. Like, one of the mistakes, some of the most boring debaters are the people that are over reliant on evidence, right? And they'll want to be like, well, according to this March 3rd study, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that doesn't translate well into this style of debate. The style that I'm going for on my show is more of like what it would be like if 5 of you were hanging around a campfire and you're arguing about like who was better, Bob Dylan or, the Beatles. And you might get angry about it. You might be like, are you shitting me? How could you put Bob Dylan in the category or whatever? Like, that's sort of the style. I'm not really interested in so much. I mean, evidence is important in certain topics, but yeah, the opening statement stuff, it's more of, I think what it is it's intimidating to see people that are super confident. But I had to learn this in debate, right? My coach had to pull me aside like my 4th tournament because I kept asking him, how good's this team? Are they good if they won any tournament? And my coach pulled me aside and was like, Rob, you're the best person in this division. He's like, you will, at the end of your debate career, you're going to be far beyond every single person you debated here. And I was like, you're just pulling my leg. He's like, no, you are. He's like, you are so nervous that these people are better than you. They're not. So just get that out of your head. And that's the truth. If you debate someone like Vosh's strong suit is he sounds incredibly confident. And he lies. He just flat out lies, right? And it makes it's a good combination to look good. It could be intimidating. And he uses language like this would be a Vosh type phrase. Well, I think the difference we have are axiomatic in nature. If you really get down to the epistemology of how we're talking vis-a-vis each other, you can see the social construction of these sorts of languages means that our axiomatic preferences might not be the same on every degree, but we'll ultimately get to the same way through sort of a deontological perspective and the epistemology that we arrive at that conclusion. I just said nothing. That was literally nothing, but it sounded good. And so I think a lot of people it's like, oh, he's got a lot of followers and he's a big streamer and he's talking very impressively and confidently. But it's like, if you just say emperors have no clothes on them, if you just go in there and say, I know what I'm talking about and I'm not going to be intimidated by a bunch of bells and whistles, you will look absolutely fine, right? I'm not saying that people be like, best take I've ever seen, best debater ever, but that shines through. The average person ends up seeing like, oh, that person knew what they were talking about. So many people focus on debate as the aspect of one person versus another or a bunch of people versus, but the real thing is, can you show your authenticity on taking and impart to an audience and to the person you're discussing with what your beliefs are on a subject? Because very rarely are you going to change the mind of the person you're debating. Most of the time, they're going to be staunchly what they believe when they walk in, when they walk out. And so that's my best advice I give to people that want to come in. It's just like, find a topic that you're passionate about and be yourself. Don't get worried. Even if you're like, let's say that I'm going to talk about, postmodernism, and I find out that in the debate's going to be Slavoj Žižek and Jordan Peterson and these college professors that have studied this their whole life. They're going to blow me out of the water on the top. But in the back of my head, I'm like, these people are no better than me. They might know more about this specific topic, but at the end of the day, we're all humans, and it's not worth getting intimidating. And I think if you could get past that milestone, I'm sure you have the same experience, like you said, getting more comfortable streaming with Sparky. A lot, even like Sparky's as down to earth of a guy as you could get, but it could be intimidating to go on someone's show that's been doing it because they have a feel for their audience and what their show's about, even if it's slightly different. And so it can be intimidating to go on and like, how do I fit into this? Do I have to step back and let them control the direction? And so, for me, the way I get by that is I always just tell myself, like, I'm a pretty good guy. No one's really worse than me and no one's really better than me. And so if I go in with that attitude, I think it'll be a good show. I think I'll have fun with it. And what's the worst that could, I always say this about debate. What's the worst that can happen? Someone crushes me? Oh, well, I still have an awesome kid and wife. Life goes on. I'll still stream tomorrow. I might be like, wow, I just got smacked around in that debate, but it's no big deal. That's how you get better. That's how you learn. You're willing to, put your ideas up against people that disagree. And so I enjoy it. Now, sometimes it gets a little heated because, the drama comes in, and a little bit of heat's good, but, you get crazy. The left-wing debate sphere on Twitch, it disappeared because they kicked off all the right-wingers, right? They don't want to call me or Sparky anymore, right? So it's just them arguing with each other, and it just turns into like, well, you're a Nazi. We're going to deplatform you. We're going to dox you. We're going to call your boss. Who the hell wants to engage in that? So that's why we're trying to bring back sort of the debate panel because I think people miss it. People like hearing regular people's political opinions or ideology, and instead, what you get's a bunch of garbage drama. So I'll show them how to run it right, as a right-winger. Like, we'll let every side talk. But yeah, I think you'd like it. And if you don't want to do a panel, my friend Andrew that runs the Crucible, he'd set you up with a debate on any topic you want with someone that would also be interested in, like, kind of jumping into a debate at the first time. So,
well, a panel sounds like it would be less, I don't know, like...
There's more... The pressure's on you more in a one-on-one. The more people there are, the less pressure that's on you because, like, I'm not talking trash on this person. There's a panelist named Stardust. She's sort of a left-wing drama streamer. I don't say that as an insult. That's what she would call herself. Stardust will come on a panel and maybe in a 2-hour panel say 3 minutes worth of stuff, right? And she'll just, like, most of the time she's joking. But the idea is sometimes you're like, I don't really have much to say about this. Or sometimes you have something to say about the topic, but then two people really take it in a direction you didn't expect. Like, a topic I had in the last panel I moderated was, did we think that the Grammys went too far with Sam Smith dressing up like Satan, and then Lady Gaga in a different event got someone puked in her mouth? Like, is it getting too far? Is sort of this degeneracy going too far? Within 30 seconds, that became a debate about birth rates and population. Because the one guy was like, well, I think this degeneracy is fueling alternative lifestyles that's encouraging people not to have children. And that's bad because that's going to hurt our economy. And so I would have never expected in a million years as the person who came up with that topic that, like, okay, within 2 minutes, the whole conversation is going to be population rates. But that's what happened. And so if you're on that panel and you're like, well, I had something to say about Lady Gaga, but I don't really have much to say about population rate. And that's what happened in that panel. So it goes different directions. So when you're on that sort of panel, sometimes you do just back off because you're like, well, the direction that it's going. But you can't really do that one-on-one. If you get into the spotlight's on you. If you're the only person on stage, there's nowhere to hide. So that's when Hot Spring says, when does the guest get to talk? I don't know. Good question. Go ahead, River. Hot Spring.
No, that's fine. I'm sorry. I feel like I totally
no, you're fine.
took it in like a whole different direction that it wasn't really supposed to go in.
I don't mind it. I didn't know how long you had to be here, but talking about East Palestine for like 2 hours would be depressing. So I thought we'd talk about other stuff anyways.
Yeah, I already talked about it for about 2 hours today too. Yeah. So I was a little East Palestine out. I'm just wondering, so what would happen then if for your panel, if you're like, oh, who's worse, the left or the right? What happens if you're like, you think they're equally bad if we're talking about like the globalist left versus the globalist right, and it's all, pro wrestling? Like, how do you...
I mean, that's it's different with different style of moderation, right? So the show is put together, my producer is my friend Aftershock, and Aftershock will try to get panelists that he knows will disagree. For example, you wouldn't set up a panel that's going to be like, it's going to be River and Rob and Aircraft Sparky and Let's Be Frank, right? Like, that wouldn't make sense because you want to have, the entire point is to have some, unless you knew that we were going to disagree about whatever the topic was. But in general, you want people that are generally on the left or the right or like different, right? Like, that's what you're shooting for. So my feeling, though, as a host is, it is not my job to tell people what to say. As long as what's being talked about, I could draw a tangential line to what the topic was, I'm fine with it. And so for me, it is totally within bounds to say, I don't see the difference. I think that it's all a charade. I think, like, that to me is a legitimate inquiry. I have as a debater, I would have an answer to that, but that's a valid position. So absolutely, you could do that. I've been on many panels, right, where it's like there's 6 of us, or there's usually 8, 4 right wingers and 4 left wingers, and I'll be the last person to give an opening statement and be like, I disagree with everyone. Like, I don't agree with any take that I've heard so far. Like, it happens, and that's one of the downsides of a panel, as far as I'm concerned, is that I'm the type of debater that likes to really flush something out, right? You don't get to do that a lot on the panel because let's say that I have a take that's slightly different than yours. It's like 60% in alignment, but slightly different. Well, how do you do it if everyone has an individual take that's slightly different and there's 8 of you? Most of the time what happens is 2 sides start clashing, and that's where it goes. And a lot of times, if your opinion's not in one of those 2 sides, it's hard to interject organically and be like, but what about my opinion? You know, it makes it more difficult. So, I mean, that could very well be what happens on this topic. I would not be surprised if we have one side say the left's worse and the other side say, no, they're both equally as bad. That could be how it shakes down. Now, I think the way it's set up, that we have at least one person that's definitely going to say the left and one person that's definitely going to say the right. So hopefully, you know, but that's what, and then if the worst happens and everyone agrees, well, for me as a moderator, I'm like, okay, new topic. Like, we'll get to something we could disagree on, because I think that's the most boring show where everyone's just sitting. Now, it's fine to have that show if it's not a debate, if it's just 4 people talking, no problem. But if you set it up as we're to have a debate on capitalism and everyone's like, yeah, we agree. It's like, oh, yeah, well, that makes it, but yeah, that's no trouble. I think that any good moderator should expect that there's no, as long as you're connected to the topic, there's no opinion that would be like, oh, that's not good for this, you know?
Just one more debate question.
Yeah, feel free.
What happens though when or if things turn to ad hominem attacks? Because like I'm just like, is that a normal thing? Because I'm not. You know, I don't think I would stick around. I would probably just leave the conversation if, you know, goes to that level because I'm not there for that.
It depends on the show, right? It depends on the moderation style. So I was doing a show with John Burke, and John Burke's moderation style is very much like, I'll give you an example. John Burke's moderating, and me and my friend Andrew Wilson are on one side of the debate. And Andrew runs a channel called The Crucible. And 2 of the lefties from The Crucible that we know, Synth and Bunk, were on the left. Now, we're all kind of friends, right? So it starts to get a little chippy. And Synth and Bunk both look like 12-year-olds. Like, I think they're both like 20. But I was like, why don't you guys get back to me when you grow a little facial hair? Now, that's a lighthearted joke. But John was like, no, you can't say that. That's an ad hom. You can't say that. For me, I would allow that because I think that it's in a good-spirited nature. My style of debate is similar to my style of moderation, which is I try to bring reciprocal energy. So if I was debating you, for example, on something we disagreed on, like let's say, you know, the moon landing, and I'm like, it was fake, and you're like, it was real. I'm not going to be like, fuck you, you're full of shit. Like, it's not going to happen, right? But if I'm debating someone on the left that's just like, I'm glad you and your wife got COVID, I'll be like, all right. I'll bring that same energy back at you. If the moderator's going to let it go, then that's fine. Then I'll treat you like you treat me. And I really try to do that. That's how I try to do my moderation. I would allow, based on the characters that are involved, a certain amount of ad hom. And by that, I mean things like that. That's stupid. You're an idiot. Well, you thought this and that was airheaded. That stuff's fine. But for the people that are more shitty, if someone gets shittier with them, I'm okay with it. And I'll give you an example. There was a guy on the show last week, which if you're wondering, it's like, I thought you said this was your first show. Yeah, I'm with a new channel now doing the show. But last week I did the show, and there was a guy who he was a lefty who he's like kecking his way through it, right? He's like trolling his way through it. So he'll say something, and then when someone challenges him on the point, he'll be like this, yeah, it's what your mom said. Huh, yeah, your mom. That's what your wife said. Except he was being way more vulgar than that. Like going into details of what he did to this guy's wife. So
oh no.
Andrew was like, Andrew just sit there and listen to it. And when he finished was like, okay, none of that's true. But you know what is true? Your girlfriend did sleep with your competition, the guy that was, and which is a true story that everyone knew. And everyone was like, oh. But for me, it's like, look, if you're going to be the tough guy coming on, talking like that to people, you have to expect to get it back. You know, so for me, I don't mind a little bit of edginess, but that sort of stuff's over the line. unless it's reciprocal. If you say that and someone comes back, I'm not going to get mad at the person that came back. But generally speaking, that wouldn't happen. But there is an edge to the panel shows because you have to understand there is a showmanship aspect of the panel show. In a one-on-one debate, me and you in a 2-hour debate, we'll have split the time in half. We each have roughly an hour to talk, right? So you could hash out disagreements, right? But on a panel show, most of them are like, 3 topics, 2 hours, 8 people. So you get like 4 minutes per topic to talk in that format. And it's like, you're going to come up with the spiciest take because you want to look good. So you're going to be like, my opponents are fucking stupid and blah, 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 blah. That's how a lot of people approach it. And I'll be honest, it's not the best to learn something. It is WWE-esque. Right? Where it's like there could be some real competition here, but people are purposely being hyperbolic, so it does happen sometimes in the panel shows. I think that, it's better, that's where you get in a better situation to do a one-on-one debate, because if you get put in with the right person, like for example, let me tell you something I'll have to deal with. Let's say I have the type of show where one day someone could be saying, didn't your girlfriend sleep with your friend? Didn't that happen? Right? And then next week, I'm talking to a professor at Mary Washington University that wants to come in and talk about sort of he wants to talk about the historical expansion of NATO. Right? This is a foreign policy expert. How the hell do I get that guy on the show when he looks at last week's show and he's like, wait a minute, this show where this guy's talking about sleeping with this other dude's wife? Like, what are you talking? I'm not doing that. So it's a fine line between like, you don't want to be too stuffy where it's like, no ad hom or anything. I don't have a problem with some level of it, but I do think that it could quickly get out of control. And, I'm as guilty as anyone, but the one thing I can say in my defense is that I'm reciprocal. That if people don't bring my wife into it, I'm never going to talk. And by the way, I never talk about people's wives. But I have called out crappy things that people have done, like accusing people falsely of sexual harassment and things like that. That's something I would never do in a debate until someone was like, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you did this, you did that. It's like, well, that's funny, because, so it is. It's not for everyone. It's not. But I think you would do fine on the panel. It would just, it has to be set up in the right type of situation. There's certain people that are toxic. There's certain people that if you get in the panel, I did a panel once. There's this big left-wing streamer, Destiny, right? And so this guy, he set up the panel. He's moderating and hosting. And he, in his head's like, Rob and Destiny will go back and forth at each other, because we always do. Okay, fair enough, right? The problem was, the topic he picked was Rittenhouse, which Destiny's like, I agree, that Rittenhouse was self-defense, right? So it becomes awkward right out of the gate, where it's like, probably the most vocal righty on the panel, me, and the most vocal lefty, we're going to be on the same side. One of the people in that debate was a woman who went by the name Progressive Brat. And she'd never done a debate. She was a TikToker. And so she comes on and right out of the gate's like, I'm not going to listen to these people mansplain. Shut up, a strong woman's talking. Like right out of the gate. With no provocation whatsoever. Like no one was like, literally all it was after her opening statement, one of the more civil right-wingers were like, well, can you explain why you think he's guilty? Oh, why are you asking me? Because I'm a woman? And like, it's like, and so right out of the gate, like it was the worst panel for her to do something like that, because me and Destiny just eviscerated her. I was like, she's yelling and I was like, let me calm down the temperature. I think what she's trying to say is, I'm a progressive, so I don't care about facts, and fuck you, you're a man. And everyone's like, oh, you can't say. And Destiny just did the same shit. We just made fun of her the whole time because she just kept yelling at me because I pronounced her country of origin Iran. It's Iran. I won't let you talk to me like that. I was like, yes, you will. You will let me say how I want. Like, and it's. Yeah, my wife's bragging because she built the chair I'm on. She's in the chat. Yeah, it's moving.
Oh, nice.
See? She's more of a handyman than me. But yeah, that's a situation where it was like someone came on being an a-hole, and unfortunately for her, there were people that were better at being a-holes than her on that panel. And the moderator kept being like, well, you can't talk to her like that. It's her first time. Yeah, I can. If she's going to do that stuff to us, then we'll do it back. But it's not for everyone. I've seen people that are just like, nah, I'm not going to put up with it. When I debated in policy debate, it happened all the time. People were like, you're white, you're racist. And I would stop the debate. You get what's called prep time, which is in between speeches, you get 10 minutes throughout the whole debate that you get to prepare. And I would take my prep time and I would tell my opponent, I'm like, I'm not a racist and I'm not going to let you call me racist. And I'll just walk out of the room. If you want to have a real discussion about race and stuff, I'm all for it. But I'm not going to let you sit here and yell at me and call me racist. Not happening. It's not worth it to me. And there were a couple times where I walked out the room because I'm like, I'm not going to do it. And then the problem with those people is stylistically, they're all hat, no substance, right? So when they can't just scream at you and, oh, you're a racist, blah, 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 and you're like, no, I'm not. When they're just like, oh, okay, I guess we'll have they have nothing to say. Like their power, their rhetorical power comes from the passion. And if you take that passion out by just like, I don't need this, I'm not going to sit here and let you call me racist. If you want the victory that bad, I'll walk out the room. That's it. I've no interest in sitting here and being berated. And then oftentimes they would, this is how these debates would always go. They'd be like, oh, okay, well, we just think that, whiteness, we got to get rid of whiteness. And I'd be like, can you define whiteness? Was I born white? No, you choose to be white. Well, what is whiteness really? And basically it comes down to money and power. And then I'd be like, well, I work at Burger King 40 hours a week to pay my way through Clarion University, which is the cheapest state school in this country or in this state.
I think you were assigned white at birth.
Yeah, well, it depends, right? Right, but they're criticizing whiteness, right? So they have to be nuanced, right? They can't say you're evil because the color you were born. They can't say that. So if they're going to call whiteness evil, it has to be a choice, right? That's now they're using the words interchangeably, right? Because they're not saying those with wealth and power are evil, right? They're saying those with whiteness are evil because they want to interchange. I'll give you another example. I took a feminism class in college, and the professor told us one day, she said, you know that children that grow up in feminine environments do much better than children that grow up in masculine environments. And I was like, so you mean children that grow up with women do better than with men? She says, no. The man could be feminine and the woman could be masculine. And I was like, well, define feminine. And she's like caring and nurturing and like providing food in a timely manner and talking softly and expressing love and emotional contact with your child. And I was like, what's masculine? Beating your child and refusing to feed them and unnecessary punishment and ignoring them. And I was like, so your big claim here is raising a child good is good and raising a child bad is bad. You've just decided to attach the word feminine and masculine to them, right? But the reason they do that is because the message they're sending is feminine women, masculine men. So they're saying, oh, when you press them on it, they're like, that's not what we're saying. But that is what they're saying. That's the same with the critique of whiteness, right? They can't just be like white. Some people might try this, but it's a losing strategy to be like white people are evil. But they'll say white people are evil because you've chosen to be white. So for example, Eminem, the rapper, he chose to be black. But Colin Powell, the general, he chose to be white because he exhibited power and lied us into the Iraq War. That's all whiteness, you see, right? And so then you would be like, well, then define what is the whiteness that I chose. And they'd be like money and power. And I'd be like, okay, I work at Burger King. Where do you work? Oh, I go to full scholarship. I go to the cheapest state school in Pennsylvania. Where do you go? Oh, I go to the Naval Academy, or I go to Louisville, or I go to Towson, or like a bigger school, And I'd be like, I drive an $80 Ford Tempo that I got out of the junkyard. What do you drive? Oh, I drive a Jaguar. I don't have electricity at my home right now because I'm so broke. My parents have a daughter that's 20 years younger than me. Their furnace just went out. I had to send my rent check to them to help pay for a furnace, so I'm going to get evicted if I don't come up with money and try to pick up after shifts at Burger King this week. Where do you work again? Oh, you got a full ride? And then it was quick. It took the piss out of their argument because they're like, what privilege do I have that they don't? And they could make superficial stuff. Well, you look white, so when you go into the store. But at the end of the day, it takes the thunder out of their argument, right? Because they choose to define these terms in ways. You see it in the establishment all the time now. Like, have you heard the term stochastic terrorism? Do you know what that is?
Yes, I've heard that terminology. I think it basically, if you say something and then somebody else acts on it or something, but it's not even that you say something specific. It's that somehow you were talking about something and someone was inspired to do something even if you didn't really say anything specifically. It's a weird thing.
Right. So for example, Trump was a stochastic terrorist because he incited an insurrection, right? Even though he said go march peacefully, doesn't matter. That's stochastic terrorism. But is it stochastic terrorism when Charles Schumer said Brett Kavanaugh would reap the whirlwind, and then someone attempted an assassination attempt? No, that wasn't stochastic terrorism. Well, why? Well, because quite literally, they just choose the definition of the word whenever it suits them, right? So the double standard is in the language. It's the same they do with words like man and woman now. It's always, right? Like, for example, using the progressive logic, right, is a trans man a man? Yes, it doesn't have to do with biologics, right? It's how they self-identify. But women make 79 cents to the dollar, right? Well, how was that study taken? Let's say that's true, argument, right? How did they take that study? Did they ask every single person, do you identify as a man? Do you identify as a woman? No, of course not, right? They didn't. And even if they did ask, how many people were really afraid to tell the truth? Because we live in a bigoted society. So you can't talk about special programs for women. What's a woman? Just someone who chooses to call themselves a woman. What's a man? Men are more violent than women. Explain that. What does that mean? Does that mean that a biological woman who claims she's a man all of a sudden became more violent? Right? And none of it makes sense. And they know it. They know, men shouldn't have a right to speak on abortion because men can't get pregnant. But then on the other hand, of course men could get pregnant and we need tampon machines in male restrooms. They know it's bullshit, but they control the language, right? And it's useful to them because they expect you to not, they want to make it as confusing as possible so that the average person doesn't have to go through this chain of like, but wait a minute, you said this, right? You said that. You said men can't get pregnant. Now you're saying men can't get pregnant. And they'll be like, this is what they'll do. They'll be like, oh, clearly, like, right, clearly we know you're full of shit. You're just making the language up as you go. And they'll talk about it all the time. When you listen to them, they'll say language is a social construct. And they mean that shit. And what they mean by that is we could change the definition. And if you really then get into it, like left-wing postmodernism, I know like a 1 out of 10 on this. But basically what it's about is truth doesn't exist. All truth is subjective. There is no objective truth. And so if truth doesn't exist, there is no, me and you can't have we can't have a conversation who won our spades game, me or you. We can't do that. Right? Because there is no truth to who won the spades game. All our conversation is a power struggle. That's it. That's all this is. It's not two people having a conversation because they're enjoying it. It's you're trying to get power over me and I'm trying to get power over you. And once you believe that, well, then you know why they lie. Right? Because there is no truth, so there's no lie. And they can say whatever the fuck they want as long as it means that they're winning the power dynamic. So I know we got off on a tangent here, but that's how they operate in the debate sphere so much.
Yeah, I think one of the ways to oh my goodness, to try to fight against the trans stuff is to not use their terminology and just to say it, just say what it is. All right, we have a man in a dress over here who'd like to be in the bathroom with little girls.
Yeah, it's so weird, right? Because so my job is I work with people with developmental disabilities, right? So I might work with someone with schizophrenia or someone with autism, a bunch of things that we would say traditionally are tough for people, going through development stages. I have a big heart to trying to use language for those sincere people that I work with that makes them feel comfortable. And I'll say a word that you'll never really hear me say, retard, right? A lot of people that I work with were retarded in school. And it hurts them now as adults. They're a 45-year-old adult and their experience with school wasn't good because particularly back then, they didn't have programs for people and stuff. And so if you were special ed, you got oh, my battery's low here. I'll have to switch it. But you got mocked and stuff like that. So I don't use that. I feel the same way with the trans person. If they sincerely in good faith ask me, can you call me these pronouns? I don't agree with their biological reality of what they think. But for the sake of having a polite conversation, sure. What I reject is you trying to force me to do something. That's too much, right? So if you come on and you're like, I demand this, I say kiss my ass. Now, for the purposes of terms of service to stream on Twitch, you don't really have a say in the matter. If I choose to misgender someone, I lose my Twitch channel. But I'm saying it's not just that. Also, for the sake of facilitating a conversation, I would use pronouns that people ask within reason, right? But I do think that there's a solid argument to be made. When is too much too much? Are we going to just do this till the end of time? If you could decide to be a woman, could you decide to be black? Can you decide to be a kid? And you see it coming.
Yeah.
You see it coming that they're trying to erode. If there's no truth, then there's no innocence. And if there's no truth, who is to say that a 12-year-old can't be romantically inclined with someone who's older? That's where it's going.
Would you be polite then and use these terms or whatever for a child? Because that's one of the places where I really I cannot affirm a child into a mental illness.
Yeah,
And
I mean
that's as an adult, I don't understand how you do that.
It depends on the hat you're wearing, right? So if you're a teacher, if you're a medical professional, if you're someone who is in a paid relationship with a kid, and by that I mean like a therapeutic relationship. So you are in your capacity at work and you have to deal with a child, right? Okay,
yeah, I've done that at work.
That you'll lose your job if you go again. I think the gender affirming thing is shit. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I can tell you a story. No, I did not lose my job. So I was
grab another headset, but please go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. No. So I was at a hood school, and at the school, you're not allowed to use anything other than the name on your birth certificate because they want to avoid situations where, kids come to school and like, call me Riri, call me Man, call me little T, all, everything other than your name. So only your name on your birth certificate is permitted. And so I had a situation where I was working with so I work with kids who are sometimes, they present a danger to themselves and others. Sometimes they're overly aggressive, and I am authorized to restrain them. So I had a boy who loved fighting, would fight all the time at the drop of a hat, and they're in high school now. So, we're post-puberty. They're in high school now, and there is a girl in his class that is telling everyone to call her a boy's name. Okay. And of course, the teachers, the staff, you're not allowed to do that. You have to call her girl name. And so this boy was confused because I had this little girl with a short haircut was, I hate to use this terminology, but like trying to step to him like a man, like she's trying to fight him. Like as if, like she's so delusional that she can fight this boy. And it's coming close to the time for me to leave because I'm not with this kid all day.
Right. And
he won't fight as long as I'm there. But I know as soon as I leave, he'll get into a fight. And, and it's not a matter of talk to a guidance counselor, talk to somebody else. It's a hood school. Like resources aren't there like that to prevent fight. So what I said, the one thing that I knew I could say to him, because he was arguing that this girl was a boy. And I said, no, this is a girl. And let me tell you something right now. Boys do not hit girls. You do not hit girls, which caused the little girl to start crying. But what's the alternative? You want a high school, you want him to beat the brakes off of you? I don't feel one bit bad.
Now, I agree, right? It's difficult, right? Like, all of these things are unique in that I think that the gender... My headset might die, and I don't know what I'm going to do because I can't find my one that plugs in. But I'll just wrap it up with this, right? It's difficult. Each situation, in general, I don't agree with the sort of biological take that people have. And I think gender-affirming care is a travesty. In 99%, I'm willing to listen to people talk about how it may have been good in the odd situation, but we don't do schizophrenic affirming care. If I walk into the hospital and say there are voices in my head, you don't treat me like shit because I hear voices, but I also don't think you should have to believe the voices are real, right? Like you have a disorder, you have an illness, and we don't treat you terribly for having an illness. And we try, and if I'm dealing with someone in my capacity at work and people say, listen, don't tell them that the voices aren't real or stuff, it's bad for them medically. I would listen to that because I'm not a doctor and whatever. But I'm not going to pretend to me that the voices are real. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not. And I think that, it's different in that sometimes that people approach you in good faith, or it's to facilitate keeping your job, or to keep your channel, or it's just you're friends with someone and they say, like your best friend comes to you and says, like, instead of calling me Jenny now, can you call me Bob? Fuck it, yeah. What's up, Bob? Whatever. That's different than like, you have to call me this. You have, like, that to me is different. And so there are times where I could see calling a kid, that was a biological male that wanted to go by a female name. I'd be like, okay, I'm only going to interact with you for 2 minutes. It's in a capacity where, it's not like my cousin or something where I'm like, are you sure? Like, this seems crazy. It's just, it's not worth the fight. It's like, it's one of the things that I see. Did you ever have this happen? I had a friend that smoked, and one time we were standing outside at Burger King, and he lit up a cigarette. We worked there, so we were on break. I didn't smoke, but he did. He lights up a cigarette, and this woman comes up and goes, "Hey, can I have a cigarette? Can I have your pack of cigarettes?" And he's like, "Sure." And she crumples them up, and she's like, "These are bad for you." It's like, well, fuck you. How about that? You're technically right, but that's how I feel. Like sometimes I'm like, you know what? It's not my place to interject. Right? If this parent wants to do something bad, now if it's you're at a strip club with the kid or you're at one of these drag shows where people are, that's different. I would speak up. I wouldn't get violent, but I would speak up. But just for day-to-day interactions, like, I don't know what it's in my capacity to do. And sometimes it's like, you just got to be like, damn, there's nothing I can do about this. But I get where you're coming from. It's a tremendous problem. And I'm open for a discussion on people telling me the benefits of gender-affirming care. But to me,
I wouldn't even use that terminology.
Right.
I don't even, don't even say that, just say, chemically castrating children.
Yeah.
Or
it's bad.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, like, people talk about it. Why do we talk about it so much? Because they do it. That's why we talk about it. Right? We didn't just bring this out of nowhere, right? And you could tell, like, it's again how they control language. This is the power of controlling institutions. You control the narrative. The problem's not that it's happening. The problem's that we notice, right? Which is absurd. But I'm sorry to do this. I'm gonna have to run. My headset's yelling at me that it's gonna die. But I want to give you a chance, even if I can't hear you. Please explain to the audience where they can see you. Particularly, you just interviewed J.D. Vance, Senator Vance, today, and you're near East Palestine. So go back to about the 2-hour mark in this video, because I did a 2-hour interview with Let's Be Frank. So go back there, and you can see the conversation we had on East Palestine if you missed it. But yeah, let people know where they can find you and sort of what you've been up to here, streaming-wise.
Oh, okay. Well, yes. My name is River Wright. My YouTube channel is Right Left of Center, and I have that same name on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. I suppose I do have a Twitter, but I don't really tweet, so don't follow me there or anything. You'll be very sorely disappointed. And I am on Aircraft Sparky shows on Mondays if you'd like to tune in and see me like regularly someplace. Oh.
Well, I'm so grateful that you came on. We need to talk more often. I think that you're just tremendous, and I really will be keeping you in my prayers, like being near East Palestine there. Listen, it's a disaster. The way they've handled it's a disaster, but hopefully the disaster, through no competence of their own, ends up not being as bad as it could. So I'm really praying that no one ends up getting severely sick. It still shows the incompetence and corruption of these institutions, but we will be thinking of you, and hopefully you stay safe there. Do everything you can to keep yourself safe. So.
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much. Oh, yeah. She also does tremendous puppet shows. All right. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon. That was my friend River. She's fantastic. Let me shut this door here for a second. Oh, my goodness. I cannot believe this. Explain to you what's happening. Somewhere in my new rearranged office, I have a headset that plugs into the USB, because this one here, the wireless, is dying. And I don't know where it's at. We rearranged stuff and I don't know where it's at. So then I found these ones that are also wireless that also aren't charged. That's a bummer. I was having fun talking to her. I really was. But yeah, River's great. Please check out her channel. She's one of, like, I shouldn't talk about someone while they're not here, but River's one of those people that you could just tell, like, is tremendous and knows what she's talking about. But it's like being new to a space and not doing a lot of this stuff a lot of times. It can be intimidating. And I think that she's going to do great. She's going to be great. So I look forward to seeing more of what she is. And like I said, she's out there interviewing senators today in East Palestine. So, I mean, you say what you want about someone like me. She's on the ground. She's doing it. You know, I talked about doing it. She did it. So, really amazing. But, no, I had fun with her. I had fun with Let's Be Frank, too. What do I think of the U.S. education system? If negative, I would say negative. That's a fair assessment. What could we do? Disband the Department of Education? Allowing people to keep their tax money and send their kids where they want? Get rid of the teachers' unions? Yeah. Teachers' unions are one of the most damaging institutions in this country. So just to, I might as well wrap up here. I would have stuck it out with River till 11 if my headset wasn't dying on me. I do have to make a call, I believe, regarding my Saturday show. We're going to have a team meeting here. So hopefully I'll jump on that call soon. But the next you'll see me tomorrow, I'm going to take off. I got some house cleaning stuff to do, and I want to spend some time with Hank. I've been very busy today, and it's not fair to my son. So I would like to spend some time with him tomorrow. So I won't be streaming tomorrow evening. Maybe I'll put a Twitter video out or something like that. And then Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern will be the inaugural show of the Arena, which is going to be me and Aftershocks show. I will tell you who all is going to be on that show. If you give me 1 second. Maybe not. Oh boy, this is always bad. Give me a second. I could have sworn I saw him somewhere. All right, panel. Counterpoints, Prime Case, Fabian Liberty, Aircraft Sparky, Pisco, and Kevin Logan. So 3 righty-ish, 3 lefty. The funny part is the most right person on that panel is Aircraft Sparky. Fabian's libertarian, so that's tangentially, and Counterpoints is like center right. Kevin Logan's far left. Pisco's more moderate left, like Sock Dem. And Prime Case is pretty far left. So definitely there'll be some centrist versus lefty vibes a little, I think. But it should be a good panel. Next week so far we have Dylan Burns, Phil KOE. Phil's tremendous. He brings energy. And yeah, we'll round that out with some more people, but it'll be good. I'm really looking forward to it. So, all right, I'm going to go make this call. Let's see if I could raid someone. Let's see if I could get that up. Yeah, where are the righties? Where y'all at? We'll get him. Frank said he'd do it. River might do it some night, though. I'll be honest. I don't know that I would recommend for River that her first debate show be this particular panel, because I think this panel is going to be a little more of an edge. So a one-on-one debate might be a better place to start. I think she'd do fine. It's just, it could be a tad bit intimidating. Where am I going? Twitch. I don't know if the sound will be working. Oh, Aftershock, we do this call. Let's not take too long. I definitely have some sleep to get to tonight. Let's raid Fabian. Why not? Oh, what is that? That's not right. All right. Try this right to Fabian, a dirty ANCAP. Nah, Fabian's a good guy. He's fun. So enjoy this. I'm going to go hop on this call and hopefully get to bed at a reasonable hour tonight. But it was a fun show tonight. I really enjoyed both of those segments. We're gonna keep lining up guests, and we're gonna get better at lining up debates and things like that. So I thank you all for sticking it out with me. I really appreciate it. But you guys are the best. So I'll see you all Saturday around 8 p.m. Eastern. Really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you'll join me. It will be on, I'll put a little video up beforehand, but it will be on the Crucible's YouTube channel and probably their Comfy channel. In weeks after that, once I get my new computer and it's a little more powerful, I might also stream to some of my channels, like my Rumble channel and maybe my Twitch channel, though maybe we'll leave Twitch out of it. But I will be, if you really want to see it this week, which I hope you do, go to the Crucible. And understand, a lot of people that are watching are going to be people that are traditionally watching Crucible shows. So there's a mix of those people that are fans of mine, but there's also some that aren't. So it'd be nice to have some of you supporters there. So thank you so much. Enjoy this Rate of Fabian Liberty. And as always, have a good one.